Chapter 135. Before Du Xiaofu could agree, Dai Xingyu's slender arms had already wrapped around Du Xiaofu's slender arms. She half pulled, half dragged Du Xiaofu out of the residence. Looking at Du Xiaofu and Dai Xingyu's backs, Ouyang Shuang's delicate face twitched slightly. She seemed a little reluctant. You should go out for a walk. Isn't today pretty good? If you go out, who knows how many men will be charmed to death. Murong Yorua smiled at Ouyang Shuang's female outfit, as if she was extremely satisfied with Ouyang Shuang's female outfit today. I'm not interested in those stinky men. Ouyang Shuang raised her head and said to Murong Yorua, you know how I feel about you. The one I like is you. In any case, I'm not interested in men. Murong Yorua smiled and said, I've said it before. I'm a friend, a sister, and a close friend. When you meet the man you like in the future, you won't think that women are better than men. After all, you're just a woman, and a beautiful one at that. Ouyang Shuang seemed to want to say something, but Murong Yorua directly pulled Ouyang Shuang's fair hand and walked out of the residence. In the bustling Lanling Prefecture city, the wide streets were bustling with activity. People shuttled back and forth, and from time to time, the clamor of hawking could be heard. Dai Xingyu pulled Du Xiaofu, and Murong Yorua pulled Ouyang Shuang. The four of them strolled along the bustling streets. Not far behind them, a yellow-striped kitten followed. The four of them walked together. With Murong Yorua and Ouyang Shuang's beauty, and Dai Xingyu's slender figure despite her young age, they naturally attracted a lot of attention along the way. Du Xiaofu also attracted countless envious and jealous gazes. In the eyes of outsiders, a man accompanied by 3 women, and 3 very beautiful women at that. Especially the 2 at the back, they were simply devastatingly beautiful. This was definitely a sign of good fortune in love affairs. However, only Du Xiaofu knew that the 2 women behind him had nothing to do with him. The one beside him was a little girl, and he treated her as his younger sister. As the 4 of them strolled around, many people immediately recognized Murong Yorua's identity. After all, Murong Yorua's reputation as the most popular courtesan in her hometown was not ordinary. Although there were countless blazing gazes falling on Murong Yorua and Ouyang Shuang, it did not bring any trouble to Du Xiaofu. Whether it was Murong Yorua or Ouyang Shuang, although they were both beautiful and moving, their temperament was enough to keep ordinary lecherous men away. Strolling leisurely along the way, Du Xiaofu finally knew what a hard job was. In addition to having to compete with Ouyang Shuang's gaze, Murong Yorua and Dai Xingyu had not been idle. They bought a lot of clothes of various colors, a lot of small accessories, and a lot of snacks for Dai Xingyu. On the bustling street, Murong Yorua's purple dress could not hide her moving figure. Her waist was tied up, and some white jade was faintly exposed under her slender neck. Her long black hair was as shiny as ink, and naturally draped over her waist. She was less cold than Ouyang Shuang, but more charming and otherworldly. She was as beautiful as a fairy walking out of a painting. She pulled Ouyang Shuang's arm, looked at Du Xiaofu beside her, and then looked at Ouyang Shuang. She smiled faintly and said, "You two are siblings. Why do you look unhappy?" "I have nothing to do with that annoying boy," Ouyang Shuang said softly. No matter how she looked at that boy, she felt uncomfortable. Especially when she thought of the sound of teeth on his chin and lower lip, she was so angry that her teeth itched. She did not like men, but she did not expect that boy to bite her mouth. At this time, that boy still had her mother to protect him, and she could not do anything to him. The more she looked at him, the more sullen she became. "You are angry about what happened last night, right?" Murong Yorua said. Ouyang Shuang did not say anything else. That aura that kept people at arm's length gave people a breathtaking feeling at this moment. Her long green dress fluttered, like a green immortal flower on the misty immortal mountain. She did not attract any dust and was so different from the rest. "Brother Xiaofu, Sister Shuang doesn't seem to like you very much." "Why?" Dai Xingyu seemed to have sensed the atmosphere between Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang. She secretly whispered to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu slightly looked at the beautiful figure in the blue dress. Her behavior was elegant and her temperament was outstanding. When she did not speak, she was extremely moving. Looking at the two women who were extremely intimate, although Du Xiaofu knew that there was nothing between Murong Yorua and Ouyang Shuang, for some reason, he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Then, he lowered his head and whispered to Dai Xingyu, "She can't beat me in a fight, so she doesn't like me. So that's how it is." Dai Xingyu murmured for a while. Then, she seriously looked at Du Xiaofu with her clear eyes and said, "Brother Xiaofu, although you are younger than Sister Shuang, she is a woman after all. She can't beat you. You have to give in to her." Du Xiaofu was dumbfounded. He thought to himself, how is she a woman? When they fight, she is even more manly than a man. I can't beat her. If I give in to that tomboy, I'm afraid I won't be able to beat her. However, he didn't expect that a woman could like another woman. Women like women. If these two women really get together, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. He couldn't help but sigh. It would be a pity if those two women got together. In the bustling Lanling Prefecture city, there were countless streets and vast areas. It was inevitable that there would be some chaos in some places every day. As long as it wasn't too close to the center of Lanling Prefecture City in Lanling Prefecture City, no one would care. This was a world where strength was respected. There were some things that no one would care about. Swoosh, on the street, a young man drenched in blood was running at full speed. One of his hands was clutching his abdomen. His 5 fingers were dripping with blood. His face was pale as blood dripped down the street. The bustling crowd on the street automatically parted as they looked at the young man running. Their gazes were filled with curiosity, but the gazes in their eyes were indifferent. You can't run away. Prepare to die. Behind the young man, there were many shouts. More than a dozen figures were holding swords. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they chased after the young man. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. These people are so despicable. So many of them are bullying one person. That person is so pitiful. Dai Xingyu looked at the figure that was getting closer and closer. Her clear eyes were filled with pity and sympathy. She looked up at Du Xiaofu as if she was hoping that Du Xiaofu could help her. In her heart, this brother Xiaofu beside her definitely had the ability to do so. He seems to be from the Dongxing Hall. The Dongxing Hall is getting stronger and stronger. The one being chased seems to be from the Star Dragon Gang. Does the Dongxing Hall want to destroy the Star Dragon Gang? The Dongxing Hall has annexed several small forces recently. It's normal that they want to annex the Star Dragon Gang. It's said that the Dongxing Hall has a big backer recently. That's why their power has increased so much. Brother Xiaofu. Dai Xingyu finally couldn't bear it anymore. She wanted to save the young man, but when she looked up again, the purple-robed young man beside her had disappeared. Bang! The young man who was drenched in blood finally fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with despair. You're from the Star Dragon Gang. At this moment, a purple-robed young man appeared beside the young man who had fallen. He lowered his head slightly and asked the young man. Blood seeped out from the corner of the tight-fitting young man's mouth. He raised his head slightly. His pale face contained some shock as he looked at the purple-robed young man who had suddenly appeared. For some unknown reason, this resolute face seemed to give him a feeling that he had seen it before in Star Dragon. However, he was unable to recall it at this moment. Who are you? The young man who was drenched in blood glanced at the purple-robed young man. His eyes were filled with vigilance as he looked at the dozen figures who had caught up with him. His eyes were filled with despair. Don't worry. I'm not here to kill you. You just have to tell me whether you're from the Star Dragon Gang or not. No matter what, I've saved your life. Du Xiaofu looked at the young man and said. Hearing this, the young man's despairing eyes were suddenly filled with hope. But looking at the young face, he was still rather doubtful. But at this time, he had no other choice and no way out. He nodded and said, I am a disciple of the Star Dragon Gang. The Star Dragon Gang. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly flickered. He threw an elixir to the young man and said, Your injuries are too serious. Take the elixir first. The young man took the elixir. He seemed to be wondering why this young man whom he had met by chance would help him. He hesitated for a moment and immediately swallowed the elixir. As the elixir entered his throat, a gentle medicinal power suddenly spread through his body. It went along his limbs and bones and finally rushed to the wound on his abdomen. It seemed to immediately stop the bleeding from the wound. The feeling of powerlessness in his body was also expelled a lot. This elixir was definitely extraordinary. Whoosh! Whoosh! In this short delay, the more than a dozen big men who were full of murderous aura and holding swords also caught up. They immediately surrounded Du Xiaofu and the injured young man in the middle. Ouyang Shuang looked at Du Xiaofu, who was surrounded not far away. There was no fluctuation in her big and beautiful eyes. Her cold temperament was undoubtedly telling people to stay away. It was as if she didn't know Du Xiaofu at all. Murong Yorua looked ahead, but she wasn't worried. She had seen Du Xiaofu's strength yesterday and knew about the relationship between Du Xiaofu and the Lanling prefecture. Naturally, there was nothing to worry about. Chapter 136. Little circle circle, don't be afraid. Big brother Xiaofu will be fine. Dai Xingyu hugged the king-scaled demonic tiger once again. Her clear eyes were filled with worry as her heart thumped. Little brother, these people are from Dongxing Hall. Thank you for your help, but there are too many of them. You should leave first. The young man in tight clothes struggled to get up. Looking at the dozen or so large men brimming with killing intent, he said to Du Xiaofu. Dongxing Hall. Du Xiaofu's brows twitched slightly. Looking at the dozen or so large men brimming with killing intent, he said, You guys leave. I don't seem to like you guys. If you make me do it, you will regret it. Where did this immature brat come from? You're courting death. A large man who looked like the leader stared at Du Xiaofu with a dark gaze. Killing intent filled his eyes as he coldly shouted to his companions, Kill the two of them together. Do it. Kill. The dozen or so people laughed sinisterly as they nodded. Killing intent gushed out as the profound energy around their bodies surged. They waved the large blades in their hands and were about to slash at Du Xiaofu and the young man in tight clothes. At this moment, the young man in tight clothes had a look of despair in his eyes. He was already prepared to fight with his life on the line. Chi! Suddenly, everyone's vision blurred. Then, the figure of the purple-robed youth disappeared from their eyes. Immediately after, a series of faint golden afterimages swept out, and a series of low muffled sounds abruptly rang out, bang bang bang. Low sonic booms rang out as the dozen or so figures flew backwards in extremely miserable postures. In the end, they slowly came to a stop after rubbing against the ground for more than 10 meters. The blades in their hands fell to the ground as they could not help but spit out blood. The auras on their bodies had completely dissipated. My divine watchtower is broken, my divine watchtower is also broken. The dozen or so men whose faces were filled with killing intent earlier were now all screaming and wailing. The divine watchtowers in all of their bodies had been broken. For martial cultivators, this was equivalent to crippling their cultivation. They would never be able to cultivate again. More than 10 people raised their heads and looked at the purple-robed youth with faces full of shock. They never would have thought that they would be crippled in less than a single exchange and become crippled from then on. It's your turn. Du Xiaofu's figure finally arrived in front of the leader. The burly man was already trembling with fear. He looked at Du Xiaofu with fear in his eyes. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, and his hoarse voice was filled with fear. He said, Boy, We are from Dongxing Hall. If you dare to touch me, Dongxing Hall will not let you go, bang. Before the burly man could finish his words, his body was sent flying. His body was dripping with blood. When his body smashed onto the ground, he had already lost all signs of life and could no longer get up. The tight-fitting young man stared blankly at the purple-robed young man in front of him. He was stunned and his throat sucked in a breath of cold air. He did not expect that this purple-robed young man who looked so young would have such a terrifying strength. What a strong young man! Around the street, many people exclaimed in amazement. After coming back to his senses, the tight-fitting young man carefully asked Du Xiaofu, "You are?" Du Xiaofu came to the side of the tight-fitting young man and did not look at the people from Dongxing Hall on the ground. Is there a person called Du Yunlong in the Star Dragon gang? The tight-fitting young man was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly nodded at Du Xiaofu and said, "Yes, he is one of the leaders of our Star Dragon gang. However, I'm afraid that he is currently surrounded by the experts of Dongxing Hall outside the city. Dongxing Hall has sent out many experts to uproot our Star Dragon gang." Outside the city. Where is it outside the city? Tell me quickly. Du Xiaofu's expression changed greatly as he looked at the tight-fitting young man and asked. A chill suddenly gushed out from his eyes, causing the surrounding temperature to drop for no reason. Under the chilling gaze of that deep gaze, the tight-fitting young man trembled and his hair stood on end. He said in surprise, "I don't know, but it shouldn't be far from the city. Leader Du and the others have just escaped from the city, so it shouldn't be too far." Little tiger. Du Xiaofu's figure swept out. On his resolute face, the gaze in his eyes was enough to kill. Before leaving the Stone City, Du Xiaofu learned from his second uncle that his second brother, Du Yunlong, was working in the Star Dragon gang in Lanling Prefecture City. When he heard the three words Star Dragon gang, Du Xiaofu immediately took action. Now that he heard about the Star Dragon gang and that his second brother was in danger, he immediately became anxious. Roar! The king-scaled demon tiger understood and immediately jumped out of Dai Xingyu's arms. Its body landed on the ground and under the gazes of Dai Xingyu and the surrounding crowd, it transformed into a ferocious tiger that was several meters long. Help me take care of the people from the Star Dragon gang. If I don't return later, help me tell Aunt Shan that I have something to do. I will return once I'm done, so there's no need to worry. Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Shuang and said. He then leaped and immediately sat on the back of the king-scaled demon tiger. Roar! The king-scaled demon tiger had been sullen for 2 days. As Du Xiaofu leaped onto it, it immediately roared and spread its wings. Its body continued to expand as it soared into the air. Finally, its 200 feet large body circled in the air, bringing with it a storm caused by the flap of its wings as it disappeared in the direction of the outskirts of the city at lightning speed. Little Circle is a demon tiger. Dai Xingyu witnessed everything that had just happened. When she thought of how she had been holding Little Circle in her arms for the past 2 days, her face immediately turned pale with fear. This little fellow. Murong Yorua's beautiful eyes faintly moved. Only now did she know that Du Xiaofu had left Little Circle in the old mansion for the past 2 days to secretly protect their safety. Ripples rose in her heart. There's actually a pulse spirit stage demon beast. Ouyang Shuang's large eyes finally showed some ripples. Mountains and mountain ranges extended into the distance. In the depths of a canyon in the mountain range, there were no less than 100 people standing together with grave expressions. Everyone's gazes were focused on the blocked road ahead. There were no less than 200 people in martial attire and wielding blades blocking the road. Their eyes were suffused with a scarlet color. At the front of the 100 people stood a young man in his early 20s. He wore a cloud robe and had black hair that reached his shoulders. His black hair was not tied up and slightly fluttered in the wind. His muscular body was stained with traces of blood and his scarlet eyes made him look like a ferocious beast. More than 100 people clustered around him. Their faces were pale and their eyes were scarlet. They clenched their weapons tightly and vigilantly looked ahead. These people were of different ages. The older ones were old, the younger ones were only around 20 years old, and there were even younger ones. However, they all had one thing in common. They all had a badge embroidered on their shoulders. The badge was embroidered with 5 stars and a dragon pattern. Commander Du, what should we do now? A young man looked ahead and asked the muscular young man leading the group. Hearing this, the muscular young man slightly raised his head. His shoulder-length black hair fluttered in the wind. There was a faint glow of profound energy flowing on his bronze skin. On his fierce face, his eyes were scarlet. He said in a deep voice, "We might still have a chance to survive if we fight to the death. Those who can escape should do so. Dongxing Hall has already prepared for a large-scale attack on our Star Dragon gang. The Star Dragon gang will no longer exist. It's all because of that bastard Bao Kongyue. He actually betrayed the Star Dragon gang and defected to Dongxing Hall. 2,000 of our Star Dragon gang's disciples were killed or injured. If I can survive, sooner or later, I will kill that bastard with my own hands." A middle-aged man in his 30s held his broadsword horizontally. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Du Yunlong, you can't escape. If you surrender, you might still have a chance to live. Those who resist will be killed without mercy. Why do you have to put up a pointless struggle?" At the entrance of the valley, a muscular man in his 30s looked at the muscular young man with a cold smile. His eyes were cold and sinister. "Cho Jiang, do you think anyone will believe your words? I'm afraid that after we surrender, we will be defenseless. You will kill us even more ruthlessly." The young man in the cloud robe in the lead stared coldly at the muscular man in his 30s with scarlet eyes. He knew Cho Jiang's character and personality very well. "Ha, Du Yunlong, you are very smart at such a young age. However, this is no longer important. With your pulsation realm strength, you are no match for me. Give up resisting. As long as you surrender and join my Dongxing Hall, I can guarantee you the same position. It will definitely be better than in the Star Dragon gang." The muscular man looked at the young man in the cloud robe and said in a deep voice. The young man in the cloud robe's eyes were still scarlet. He said, "No need. I am a member of the Star Dragon gang. I was there when the Star Dragon gang was founded. If you have the ability to kill me today, as long as I can leave, I will definitely destroy your Dongxing Hall in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly burst out from the young man in the cloud robe. He held a broadsword tightly in his hand. Runes flashed on it. His aura was fierce and unparalleled. "Ha!" When the muscular man called Cho Jiang saw this, he laughed wildly and said, "You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Du Yunlong, you are courting death." The young man in the cloud robe held the broadsword tightly in his hand and violently stomped on the ground. A huge rock under his feet immediately cracked. He immediately rushed out and said, "Everyone, listen up. If you can leave, leave now. We will avenge our dead brothers in the future. Fight!" Beside the cloud-robed young man, over 100 people hurriedly pounced out with scarlet eyes. Waves of profound energy surged. Although their individual strengths were not strong, when gathered together, their momentum was still shocking. It shook the space to the point that it trembled slightly, and the surrounding rocks shot out. "You overestimate yourselves. Kill them. Don't let a single one of them go." Cho Jiang sneered when he saw the young man in the cloud robe and the others attack. As soon as he shouted, many people with fierce auras rushed out with their broadswords and attacked the young man in the cloud robe. "Fight!" The young man in the cloud robe shouted coldly. The broadsword in his hand swept out and directly cut a muscular man in half. However, at the same time, the hundreds of people around him were blocked and trapped by the 200 people in front of him. Chapter 137. Bang! 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 A bloody battle was about to break out. Blood splattered everywhere, followed by screams and wails. Go to hell. Cho Jiang swung his saber horizontally. A saber light accompanied by runes shot out. After killing a middle-aged man, his figure appeared in front of the cloud-robed youth. The two looked at each other with murderous intent. There was no need for words. They immediately attacked. Pulse Realm, Mysterious Realm. You are no match for me. Cho Jiang shouted. He raised his saber and a saber light swept towards the cloud-robed youth. The saber light broke through the air. The rune saber light tore through the air, causing the space to emit a whoosh sound. You will only know after you try. Complete Pulse Realm, Mysterious Realm might not be able to kill me. The cloud-robed youth shouted. He waved his saber to block the saber light. Whoosh! The two saber beams instantly collided and exploded. Profound Chi exploded, directly shattering the gravel on the ground. From time to time, the saber beams would leave cracks on the rocks. Bang! Bang! In a short period of time, the cloud-robed young man and Cho Jiang collided once again. The blade lights collided and the energy ripples from the blade lights surged. Both of them were knocked back at the same time, but then they collided again like lightning. After more than 10 moves, the cloud-robed youth was finally unable to hold on. After all, there was a difference of 2 levels between them. If it was only 1 level, he would not be afraid. Bang! Bang! The two collided, and their figures separated again. As the saber light dissipated, the young man in the cloud robe was pushed back and blocked Cho Jiang's saber. However, Cho Jiang's left hand didn't have time to block it and landed directly on his body. Du Yunlong, you are no match for me. You are the #1 warrior of the Star Dragon League. Unfortunately, you are still a little lacking in front of me. If I let you grow for a few years, you might be able to compete with me. Now, die. Cho Jiang sneered. He dragged his saber across the ground and walked towards the cloud-robed youth. The cloud-robed youth's eyes were scarlet and gloomy. He looked at Cho Jiang, who was walking towards him step by step. He clenched his saber tightly and stomped his feet on the ground again. His figure was like a beast that had finally erupted. On his saber, the saber light was like a waterfall that cut through the air and slashed towards Cho Jiang. Luminous saber art. Cho Jiang shouted coldly. The blade technique in his hand danced, and the profound chi around his body surged out violently. The runes on the blade flashed, and he attacked with all his strength. Finally, it turned into a blade light that directly blocked the battle blade of the young man in a cloud robe, causing the energy impact of the battle blade of the young man in a cloud robe to directly solidify and gradually dissipate. The young man's expression changed drastically. He wanted to withdraw his saber, but he found that it had been sucked in by a huge force. No matter how hard he tried, the saber wouldn't budge. In the end, your cultivation is still not enough. This hall will not give you any more time to grow. Cho Jiang sneered. Suddenly, a terrifying force burst out from his blade, and a ferocious force fiercely acted on the blade of his blade. Kaka! The saber bent from the middle of the blade into an astonishing arc, and then directly broke into pieces. Puchi! The moment the battle saber in the young man's hand broke, his body was immediately forced back. His hand was numb, and he finally spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Bang! Cho Jiang took the opportunity to rush out. His left hand was as fast as lightning, and a fist print shattered the defensive profound chi around the young man in a cloud robe. Then, the fist print fiercely smashed on the young man's chest. Puchi! The young man in a cloud robe suffered another heavy blow. His body was sent flying, and he fell heavily on a huge rock 10 meters away. The impact caused blood to drip from his mouth, and the huge rock behind him cracked. Hee hee, Cho Jiang sneered and walked forward step by step. Many people around wanted to stop him, but they couldn't even protect themselves. They were simply powerless to stop him. They could only watch as Cho Jiang held the cold blade and walked step by step toward the young man in a cloud robe. You're right. In fact, I would have killed you even if you had just surrendered. How can a fierce general of the Star Dragon gang be left alive and become a big threat to the Dongxing Hall in the future? Zhou Jiang raised his saber, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He immediately slashed his saber at the young man in a cloud robe who couldn't resist. Looking at Zhou Jiang's saber, the young man in a cloud robe's pupils shrank. A hidden dagger faintly appeared in his right long sleeve. At this time, there was no other choice but to die together with Zhou Jiang. Chi. However, at this moment, just when everyone thought that the young man in a cloud robe was dead for sure, a sharp sound of wind breaking suddenly came from the sky. A cold light with a faint golden light streaked across the sky like a golden lightning bolt, and finally struck Zhou Jiang's raised saber fiercely. Ding! Sparks flew in all directions. A huge force surged on Zhou Jiang's saber. He almost lost his grip on the saber, and his body staggered to one side. In a panic, Zhou Jiang took a few steps to stabilize his body. His eyes suddenly changed color. The thing that hit his saber just now was a small dagger. It was thrown from a distance, but it still had such great strength. It was enough to show that the attacker's strength was amazing. This sudden turn of events caused the young man in a cloud robe to be stunned. Roar! At this moment, a tiger roar shook the sky. A gale surged in the air, and a huge flying tiger appeared. Everyone in the valley was so shocked that they stopped fighting. There were no demonic beasts in the mountain range outside the city. Everyone in the valley nervously raised their heads to look. They saw a huge flying tiger with a pair of wings, covered in king-pattern scales, flapping its wings as it flew over. The tiger's mouth was ferocious as it roared. When it spread its wings, it was at least 200 feet in size. In an instant, it appeared in the sky. Whoosh! The ferocious tiger flapped its wings, and a gale surged in the air, sweeping up the sand and stones below. Heavens, that's a king-scaled demonic tiger. This king-scaled demonic tiger has probably reached the pulse spirit realm. Everyone looked at each other in shock. The terrifying huge demonic tiger flapped its wings and circled, making it difficult for people to breathe. The profound energy in their bodies was also blocked. Chi! On the back of the king-scaled demonic tiger, a purple-robed figure flew down from the sky and landed in front of the young man in a cloud robe. His tightly knitted eyebrows looked at the young man in a cloud robe, and finally relaxed. Then, a smile appeared on his resolute face. The young man in a cloud robe struggled to stand up from the ground. He looked at the purple-robed youth who had suddenly appeared on the back of a huge demonic tiger, like a god descending from the heavens to save his life. He looked at the young and resolute face, and the deep gaze under his sharp eyebrows. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. His body trembled, and his eyes suddenly became excited. He said in a trembling voice, "Old 3, you are Old 3. Am I dreaming?" The young man in a cloud robe was in disbelief and was completely stunned. He never thought that the young man who descended like a god would actually be Old 3. He was the one who was called a fool in the family back then because he was born with a crippled meridian, unable to cultivate. He was still in a daze, and was secretly called a fool by others. "Second brother, it's good that you are fine. Take the pill, and leave the rest to me." Du Xiaofu smiled and came to the side of the young man in a cloud robe. He handed over a pill in his hand. Du Xiaofu could recognize the young man in a cloud robe from afar. He was the son of his second uncle, Du Yunlong, and also his second cousin. At the critical moment, Du Xiaofu took out a dagger from his Qianquan bag and threw it over. Fortunately, it came at the right time. If it had come a little later, Du Xiaofu sucked in a breath of cold air and was secretly terrified. Du Yunlong took the pill in Du Xiaofu's hand and swallowed it in a daze. His eyes were still fixed on the face in front of him, as if he did not recognize it. Was this really his third brother? Du Yunlong was still thinking that the next time he returned home, he would invite a powerful talisman master from the Lanling Prefecture city to visit his third brother. Even if he could not cultivate, it would be good as long as he was no longer an idiot. But now, whether it was the aura or temperament of his third brother, it was completely different. Commander. As Du Xiaofu and the huge king-scaled demonic tiger arrived, the disciples of the Star Dragon gang hurriedly got rid of the people from Dongxing Hall who were trying to intimidate the king-scaled demonic tiger and came to Du Yunlong's side. Their eyes fell on Du Xiaofu as if he was their savior. They could also tell that this person was definitely a brother of their commander. With the huge king-scaled demonic tiger, it would be enough for them to escape. Who are you? This is a grudge between our Dongxing Hall and the Star Dragon gang. It has nothing to do with outsiders. It's better if you don't interfere. Cho Jiang stared at the king-scaled demon tiger that was circling in midair, and then turned to look at Du Xiaofu's back. His expression had already turned serious. He had not expected Du Yunlong to know such a strong expert. Third brother, this person is the younger brother of Dongxing Hall's Hall Master Cho Shan. He is Dongxing Hall's Vice Hall Master Cho Jiang. He is at the complete pulsation realm and is very difficult to deal with. Hearing Cho Jiang's words, Du Yunlong said to Du Xiaofu with a slightly serious expression. Second brother, I told you to let me do it. Don't worry, we brothers will talk later. Du Xiaofu smiled at Du Yunlong and then slowly turned around. He looked at Cho Jiang, who was not far away. His deep eyes suddenly darkened and a chill shot out. He said, "You want to kill my second brother? Do you think this has anything to do with me?" Second brother, hearing this, Cho Jiang's expression changed. He looked at the king-scaled demonic tiger circling in the air and then squeezed out a smile. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "I think I must have some misunderstanding with Commander Du. I won't leave now. I'll leave now." After saying this, Cho Jiang wanted to leave. The huge king-scaled demonic tiger made him realize that he could not fight against it. No need to leave. If you end it yourself, I can leave your corpse intact. If you want me to do it, there won't even be a corpse left. Cold words came out of his mouth. How could Du Xiaofu let go of someone who wanted to kill his second brother? Today is the third watch period. Little Yu made some adjustments yesterday and today. Then he will prepare for the next update. I would also like to tell everyone about the update time. The normal update time is 12 noon, 5 p.m., and 10 p.m. If there are any special circumstances, Little Yu will inform you in advance. When the time comes, I hope everyone can understand. After all, everyone will have some last-minute things happen. In addition, Little Yu would also add more chapters to the rewards given by his brothers and sisters in the future. Every 50,000 chasing wave coins would be a step, and Little Yu would add 3 chapters. If a guild master or commander appeared at once, Little Yu would add 4 or 8 chapters. If he added too many chapters, he wouldn't be able to finish them in a day, and could only add chapters separately. His brothers and sisters could supervise him, and Little Yu wouldn't slack off. I also ask all readers to support the original version. After all, reading the original version is the greatest support and Little Yu's greatest motivation. Little Yu will update 5 times tomorrow. Little Yu will update 5 times tomorrow. Little Yu will work hard until 6 times tomorrow. Little Yu is afraid that it will affect him in the long run. Brothers, please forgive me. Little Yu did some calculations. In the future, he will try his best to maintain an average of 5 to 6 times a day. This is the limit. Any more and he will be hospitalized. Chapter 138. Sir, we are from the Eastern Prosperity Hall. Our Eastern Prosperity Hall has a close relationship with the White Tiger sect. Cho Jiang's gaze slightly trembled. He knew that he would not be able to deal with the king-scaled demonic tiger. However, with his relationship with the White Tiger sect, even the youth before him would not dare to touch him. In the entire Lanling Prefecture city, no one would dare to touch the White Tiger sect. White Tiger sect, Du Xiaofu slightly lifted his head, before looking at the king-scaled demonic tiger circling in mid-air, and softly said, Kill. Roar. The king-scaled demonic tiger roared, as its enormous body swooped down, pouncing directly towards Cho Jiang. The murderous intent in its eyes spread. Not good. Cho Jiang's expression turned ugly. He did not expect that the other party would not even place the white tiger sect in his eyes. As he sensed the terrifying aura from the king-scaled demonic tiger, he hastily kept the blade in his hand into his qiankuan bag. His hand seals rapidly changed, as he activated the martial veins in his body. Vigorous profound energy accompanied by rays of light from symbols instantly condensed into a giant blue python shadow behind him. Hiss hiss. A bloody stench spread out from the giant blue python shadow, as its tongue extended and retracted at lightning speed. However, its illusory eyes seemed to be filled with dread as it looked at the king-scaled demonic tiger. However, under Cho Jiang's command, it still charged towards the king-scaled demonic tiger like lightning. Roar. The king-scaled demonic tiger roared, as if it did not place the giant blue python shadow in its eyes. It flapped its wings and pierced through the air, as mysterious symbols faintly fluctuated on its tiger claws, emitting a faint golden glow. Then, an extremely domineering tiger claw directly grabbed the giant blue python shadow's body. Chi-la-la. A terrifying shockwave accompanied by some faintly discernible symbol fluctuations, as a large gale unfurled, causing the surrounding rocks and sand to fly. The crowd watched as the giant blue python shadow was directly torn apart by the king-scaled demonic tiger's claw, as Cho Jiang's body was sent flying. Ugh! Cho Jiang violently vomited blood from his mouth, as his body was sent flying backwards. His eyes were filled with shock. The king-scaled demonic tiger before him was much stronger than he had imagined. Roar! Unfortunately, Cho Jiang no longer had the chance. The king-scaled demonic tiger's huge body swooped down and appeared in front of Cho Jiang in an instant. Its ferocious bloody mouth seemed to want to swallow the space and directly swallowed Cho Jiang into its mouth. Vice Hall Master is dead. Run! Run! Seeing Cho Jiang, the Vice Hall Master, die in the mouth of the terrifying king-scaled demonic tiger, the disciples of Dongxing Hall, who were so scared that their legs turned to jelly, no longer dared to attack. They began to flee in all directions. Roar! The king-scaled demon tiger roared and flapped its wings in pursuit. Immediately, miserable shrieks and howls filled the canyon. Du Yunlong swallowed the elixir and felt much better in his body. Watching the huge king-scaled demonic tiger attack, he was dumbfounded. Looking at the back of the purple-robed youth, he was also shocked and happy. He did not know what had happened to his third brother in the family all these years, but now he was sure that his third brother was no longer the foolish young master he used to be. Du Xiaofu turned around and looked at his second brother, Du Yunlong, behind him. With a smile in his eyes, he said, "I didn't expect second brother to have already reached the mysterious level of the pulsating realm. I'm afraid it won't be long before you can catch up to second uncle. I'm still not good enough. Compared to those experts, I'm still far from them." Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu, and then asked in confusion, "Third brother, why did you come to Lanling Prefecture City? How did you know I was here?" "It's a long story. I'll tell you in detail later." Du Xiaofu's gaze swept over the many injured Star Dragon gang members behind his second brother, Du Yunlong, and asked, "What happened to you?" "We were betrayed by a traitor in the Star Dragon gang. Unfortunately, the expert's cave will fall into the hands of the Dongxing Hall. The Dongxing Hall is afraid that the information will be leaked, so they want to uproot the Star Dragon gang," Du Yunlong said to Du Xiaofu. "Expert's cave? What expert's cave?" Du Xiaofu immediately asked Du Yunlong curiously. Du Yunlong said with a hint of regret, "Not long ago, the president and I accidentally discovered it in the Thousand Caves. There were energy fluctuations in one of the caves, and there was also a seal. Rumor has it that a long time ago, an expert died in a great battle near the Thousand Caves. Many of the caves in the Thousand Caves are traces of that battle. Therefore, we suspect that it is very likely to be the cave dwelling of that expert who died a long time ago. There might be the inheritance of that expert inside. If we can obtain that expert's inheritance, the benefits would be extraordinary. Du Yunlong's voice paused for a moment, and his eyes were filled with coldness and unwillingness. He said, I'm afraid that Qiu Shan and that traitor of the Dongxing Hall have already arrived at the 1,000 Caves. Expert's cave, expert's inheritance. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up when he heard this. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then looked at Du Yunlong and asked, Second brother, how strong is Qiu Shan from the Dongxing Hall? He just reached the pulse spirit realm. He's not weak in Lanling Prefecture City. After Du Yunlong finished speaking, he seemed to have sensed something. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Third brother, do you want to go to the 1,000 Caves? Just reach the pulse spirit realm? Du Xiaofu smiled, then asked Du Yunlong, Second brother, is the 1,000 Caves far? Du Yunlong looked at the king-scaled demon tiger that was chasing after the Dongxing Hall disciples in the distance and said, If you walk there, it's naturally very far. You might not be able to get there in a few days. However, you have a pulse spirit realm king-scaled demon tiger as a mount. I'm afraid that less than an hour will be enough. After pausing for a moment, Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu with some worry and said, Third brother, they have a lot of people. Moreover, the Dongxing Hall has recently attached themselves to the White Tiger sect. This time, there might be experts from the White Tiger sect accompanying them. Second brother, do you want the expert's cave to be taken by the Dongxing Hall? Du Xiaofu looked at Du Yunlong and asked. Du Yunlong raised his eyebrows. His well-built body suddenly straightened. His eyes flashed and he said, Third brother, I'll go with you. If there really is an expert's inheritance, even if I can't get it, the Dongxing Hall won't get it. Sooner or later, I'll make them pay for this. Okay, we'll go together. Du Xiaofu smiled. From what he remembered from when he was young, his second brother was not someone who would back down. Then, Du Xiaofu called back the king-scaled demon tiger that was chasing after the Dongxing Hall disciples. Du Yunlong asked the disciples of the Star Dragon gang to hide nearby. Then, he and Du Xiaofu jumped onto the king-scaled demon tiger's back and headed to the 1,000 Caves. The 1,000 Caves, a place 2,000 miles away from the Lanling Prefecture City. In the depths of the mountain range, there were continuous mountains. The reason why the 1,000 Caves was called the 1,000 Caves was because there was a large rocky valley surrounded by huge rock pits. There were at least 1,000 of them. Some of the caves were connected by winding paths. Many fierce beasts lived in them. It was said that there were even demonic beasts' nests in the 1,000 Caves. A long, long time ago, there was a legend about the 1,000 Caves. It was said that 1,000 years ago, two experts had a great battle near the 1,000 Caves. Many of the caves were left behind by the two experts. Unfortunately, one of them died near the 1,000 Caves. Many adventurers and treasure hunters had searched the 1,000 Caves, but they had found nothing. After all, it was just a legend. Later, it was forgotten by everyone. However, the legend had been passed down, but no one cared. After all, it was something that happened thousands of years ago. Among the bare rocks, it was rare to see a lush green area. However, in the mountain streams, one could occasionally see water splashing water droplets. Near a valley, there were figures standing tall. Each of them held a blade and sealed off the entrance to the valley. Near a cave, there were dozens of figures standing in a cluster. The three middle-aged men in front were nervously looking at the cave in front of them. An old man in a wide robe was forming hand seals. Runes were constantly flying out and landing on a layer of invisible energy fluctuations above the cave. Walala! Inside the cave, as the runic hand seals fell, waves of energy fluctuations spread out from time to time, causing the eyes of those people to blaze. The legend is true. This seal was left behind by an expert. It has been thousands of years, and the seal has become much weaker. If it wasn't for the energy fluctuations inside, I'm afraid we wouldn't have discovered the seal in the cave. A middle-aged man in his 40s had a blazing look in his eyes. If we can obtain the inheritance of that expert, we'll be rich. A thin man with a pointy mouth and monkey-like cheeks had ripples in his eyes. Then, there was a faint trace of worry on his face. He said, Shan Qingbai has been killed. The rest of the Star Dragon gang is not a concern, but that Du Yunlong must die. That kid is young, but he has been following Shan Qingbai. He has great prestige in the Star Dragon gang. If he doesn't die, the remaining members of the Star Dragon gang won't give up. Vice Hall Master Bao, don't worry. You are now one of the 2 Vice Hall Masters of my Dongxing Hall. The Star Dragon gang has been uprooted. What's more, my brother has found Du Yunlong's hiding place. I'm afraid that Du Yunlong has become a corpse by now. The middle-aged man in his 40s patted the shoulder of the monkey-like man and said, Vice Hall Master Bao has made a great contribution to the Dongxing Hall this time. Please don't worry. I, Qiu Shan, will not treat you unfairly. Thank you, Hall Master Qiu. The monkey-like man heard this and smiled. He was very happy. Be quiet. Elder Qiu is breaking the seal. Don't disturb Elder Qiu. A middle-aged man in his 40s looked back at the monkey-like man and the middle-aged man in his 40s, and then stopped talking. Yes, Elder Lu. The 2 immediately nodded. Their attitudes were extremely respectful. Walala. In the air, the huge king-scaled demon tiger flapped its wings and flew as fast as lightning. Wherever it passed, the mountains and dense forests would undulate, and a storm would sweep through the air. Chapter 139. On the back of the king-scaled monstrous tiger, Du Xiaofu briefly told Du Yunlong about what had happened in Stone City and the Du family. Du Yunlong was also surprised to learn about the changes in Stone City and Drifting Cloud County. However, Du Xiaofu only spoke a few words about the matter between him and his drunkard father. As for the problem of him being able to cultivate, he didn't talk much about it either. Du Xiaofu also learned from his second brother Du Yunlong that Du Yunlong had been adventuring alone these past few years. In the beginning, he had wandered everywhere and encountered many dangerous situations. Later, he had established the Star Dragon gang with a few companions. As one of the founding members, he had also become the commander of the Star Dragon gang. In a short 2 years, the Star Dragon gang had also become more and more prosperous. However, not long ago, the vice president of the Star Dragon gang, Bao Kongyue, had sold the news to the Dongxing Hall because of the discovery of a cave that might contain the legacy of an expert. As a result, the president of the Star Dragon gang, Dan Qingbai, had been killed by the Dongxing Hall master, Qiu Shan. The experts of the Star Dragon gang had also been wiped out one by the people of the Dongxing Hall. Third brother, it's up ahead. Suddenly, on the back of the king-scaled monstrous tiger, Du Yunlong pointed to a rocky valley below and said to Du Xiaofu. Looks like there are quite a few of them. Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the sky below, then he asked Du Yunlong, second brother, how are your injuries? After taking your elixir, I'm fine now. Du Yunlong nodded. That's good. Looks like they haven't succeeded yet. Du Xiaofu's gaze shifted as he said softly. At the entrance of the valley, a dozen or so Dongxing Hall disciples were blocking the way in. Suddenly, they saw someone approaching and one of them shouted, "This place has been sealed off by the Dongxing Hall. No one is allowed to set foot here. Violators will be killed without mercy. You're courting death." Du Yunlong's figure shot out like lightning, a palm strike landing directly on the body of a Dongxing Hall disciple, sending his body flying. Roar! A huge ferocious tiger pounced from below, glaring fiercely. The tiger's claws fell, and a man holding a saber was directly smashed into pieces. The ferocious tiger opened its mouth, and directly swallowed another man. It's a demonic beast. Run! This demonic beast is too strong. Run! In their panic, the disciples of Dongxing Hall did not dare to stop them and directly fled up the valley. "Hey, there's a demonic beast roar." In front of the cave, the expressions of the three middle-aged men in the lead changed drastically. After looking at each other in dismay, the middle-aged man in his 40s, who was called Elder Lu, said, "Let's go and take a look. Don't disturb Elder Jiu from breaking the seal." As soon as he finished speaking, figures immediately rushed out of the cave. Roar! The tiger's roar was like thunder in the mountain forest. Just as Elder Lu and the rest rushed out of the cave, a huge demonic tiger leaped out of the cave, eyeing them covetously. A terrifying aura surged, causing the bodies of the weaker cultivators to tremble violently. The profound energy within their bodies was also blocked. "Hall Master, help! This demonic tiger killed many of our brothers." Many disciples of Dongxing Hall who had fled up the valley in a panic saw the people coming out of the cave, and immediately ran toward them as if they had seen their savior. The terrifying demonic tiger made them powerless and terrified. Along the way, many disciples of Dongxing Hall had been killed or swallowed into the stomach of the demonic tiger. A king-scaled demonic tiger at the pulse spirit realm. Elder Lu's expression suddenly changed, and his face instantly became solemn. The terrifying aura of the king-scaled demonic tiger made him tremble with fear. "Du Yunlong, that boy is not dead. It's Du Yunlong, that boy is here." The thin man with a protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks suddenly looked at the two figures slowly walking out from behind the terrifying demonic tiger. When his eyes fell on the strong young man in a cloud robe, his whole body suddenly trembled. "Third brother, the one on the right is Bao Kongyue, the traitor of the Star Dragon gang. The one in the middle is Qiu Shan, the hall master of Dongxing Hall." Du Yunlong frowned slightly, and whispered to Du Xiaofu, "The one on the left is Lu Zhangming of the White Tiger sect. He should be at the pulse spirit realm like Qiu Shan." The people of the White Tiger sect really intervened. White Tiger sect. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He Jun was the young master of the White Tiger sect. He did not expect that he would have to deal with the White Tiger sect now. Seeing Du Xiaofu's frown, Du Yunlong thought that Du Xiaofu was worried. He said, "Third brother, I can deal with Bao Kongyue at most, but the remaining Qiu Shan and Lu Zhangming are not easy to deal with. If we can't do it, there is hope. It's not too late to retreat. With the king-scaled demonic tiger, I believe they can't catch up with us. Second brother, you deal with that Bao Kongyue. Leave the rest to me and the little tiger." Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the nearly 300 disciples of Dongxing Hall. There were many of them in the pulse realm, but they probably couldn't do much. The only troublesome ones were the White Tiger sect's Lu Zhangming and Qiu Shan. Looking at the king-scaled demonic tiger, the purple-robed youth, and Du Yunlong, Qiu Shan suddenly thought of something. His expression changed drastically, and he stared at Du Yunlong. He asked, "Du Yunlong, why aren't you dead yet? Where is my brother? Your brother's name is Qiu Jiang, right?" Du Xiaofu walked out and frowned slightly. Then, he looked at Qiu Shan and smiled, "He is already dead. You don't have to look for him anymore." "Kid, who are you?" Qiu Shan's expression changed drastically when he heard this. A chill suddenly surged out. Du Xiaofu said, "Who I am is not important. What's important is that Qiu Jiang wanted to kill my second brother, so I killed him." "So you are Du Yunlong's brother? Since you killed my brother, I will kill you and your brothers to accompany him in death." As he shouted, a saber appeared in Qiu Shan's hand. It shone with a cold light. This saber was not at the level of a spirit weapon, but it was not far from it. Xiao! Qiu Shan attacked furiously. His feet touched the ground, and his figure immediately rushed towards Du Xiaofu. The saber light cut through the air and arrived in front of Du Xiaofu in an instant. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger roared and pounced. It suddenly spread its wings, and at the same time, its tiger claws grabbed at Qiu Shan's saber. Its speed was much faster than Qiu Shan's. Swish! The tiger claws slapped on Qiu Shan's saber light and directly tore it apart. Then, the tiger claws carried a terrifying fluctuation of golden runes and hit the saber in Qiu Shan's hand at the same time. Dang dang! A huge impact shook Qiu Shan's palm. Blood flowed out, and at the same time, the saber in his hand fell to the ground. How can this demonic tiger be so strong? Qiu Shan was shocked. The king-scaled demonic tiger's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. He could not compete with it at all. This king-scaled demonic tiger is not ordinary. If we can kill it and get the mystic bones and essence blood, then this time's harvest will be amazing. Let's join forces and kill this king-scaled demonic tiger first. Lu Zhangming came to Qiu Shan's side and looked at the king-scaled demonic tiger. His eyes were burning with passion. As soon as he finished speaking, his hand seals changed and directly channeled his martial vein. A strange demonic eagle's vein spirit condensed. Everyone else, let's kill Du Yunlong and that kid together. Qiu Shan nodded. As his voice fell, he also changed his hand seals and channeled his martial vein. A wolf demonic beast's vein spirit condensed. Rumble. The two joined forces and attacked the king-scaled demonic tiger together with the vein spirit. A terrifying aura burst out. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger roared. It was not afraid of the two at all. It flapped its wings and charged at them. Du Xiaofu was not worried at all. After the king-scaled demonic tiger broke through to the mysterious level of the Pulse Spirit Realm, it had already killed 3 initial Pulse Spirit Realm cultivators in the Stone City. At this moment, Qiu Shan and Lu Zhangming were only 2 people. Naturally, they were not a match for the king-scaled demonic tiger. Let's kill Du Yunlong first. Bao Kongyue took the opportunity to shout loudly. He signaled the people behind him to kill Du Yunlong. As for the purple-robed youth, he did not seem to care too much about him. However, the Pulsation Realm cultivators in Dongxing Hall did not seem to listen to Bao Kongyue's words. They even secretly looked at her with disdain. However, after exchanging glances with each other, the hall master gave the order first. Then, many figures surrounded Du Yunlong. Third brother, be careful. Du Yunlong's eyes were serious. Although the strongest Pulsation Realm cultivators in Dongxing Hall were only at the mysterious level of the Pulse Realm, including Bao Kongyue, there were only 2 Pulsation Realm cultivators. However, there were no less than 8 initial Pulse Realm cultivators. There were many perfected innate realm cultivators. Under the siege, he could not help but be worried. He was even more worried for his third brother. Kill! In a short period of time, as soon as Du Yunlong's voice fell, a burly man who had just ascended to the Pulsation Realm picked on the soft persimmon. It seemed that the purple-robed youth was much easier to deal with. A fist instantly flew towards Du Xiaofu. Profound energy surged in front of the fist, and even the air was directly torn apart. With a sharp sound of breaking wind, the fist directly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Second brother, I said that you only need to deal with Bao Kongyue. Leave the rest to me. As soon as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, he saw the fist coming at him. A strange smile flashed across his eyes. His expression was indifferent. Instead of advancing, he retreated. He took a step forward and shook his arm. His right fist met the fist of the initial Pulse Realm cultivator in an overbearing manner. Bang! As the fists collided, a violent gust of wind swept out. Under Du Yunlong's fearful gaze, the sound of bones breaking came from the fist of the newly ascended Pulsation Realm man. Puchi! As the former's body was sent flying, blood spurted out of his mouth. He smashed into a stone wall in the distance. The stone wall trembled and cracks spread. He could no longer get up. Du Yunlong was flabbergasted by how he had killed an early-stage Pulsation Realm martial artist with one simple and clean move. Chapter 140. Not long ago, Du Yunlong had only seen the king's scaled demonic tiger attack, but he was not clear about Du Xiaofu's strength. In his imagination, no matter how strong his third brother was, with his age, he could not be that strong. Third brother's strength is so terrifying. At this moment, Du Yunlong was shocked to know the extent of Du Xiaofu's strength. He could easily kill a Pulse Realm expert with one move. Even if he was at his peak, he could not do it. After the shock, his face revealed a joyful expression. That young man is also a powerful expert. He is even stronger than Du Yunlong. Originally, no one had taken the purple-robed young man seriously. However, in the blink of an eye, they were all shocked. It turned out that the purple-robed young man was even more terrifying. Boom! Du Xiaofu did not stop. His body moved again. Golden runes gushed out from his purple robe. His aura suddenly became overbearing. His whole body was wrapped in a faint golden halo. He was like a real demonic beast in human form. Accompanied by a dazzling light, he directly crashed into the surrounding disciples of Dongxing Hall. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Du Xiaofu's figure was like a cannonball. The disciples of Dongxing Hall were blown away one by one. His every move crushed everything. No one could stop him. This brat is powerful. Hurry up and surround him. Don't panic. A big man of Pulse Realm mystery level was shocked. However, it was not bad. He was only dazed for a moment. Then, he shouted loudly. His eyes were sharp. He turned his palm into a claw. The claw moved like a blade and directly pressed down on Du Xiaofu. Xiao! In the center of the claw, the air was twisted and turned, forming an air vortex. The sharp aura spread out. This kind of strength was definitely extremely powerful in Dongxing Hall. Looking at the incoming claw, Du Xiaofu only glanced at it indifferently. Just as the sharp claw was about to appear in front of him, he suddenly clenched his fist. Golden runes surged, and then suddenly blasted out. Finally, it landed heavily in the center of the sharp claw. The fist and the claw collided, and a strong wind swept out. At the moment of contact, Du Xiaofu's arm shook, and an overbearing hidden force gushed out. Boom! A low, muffled sound rang out. Du Xiaofu's body remained as immovable as a mountain, but the Pulsation Realm Mystic Realm Cultivator's feet scraped against the ground as he retreated. The rocks on the ground cracked, and cracking sounds rang out from his palm. The bones in his arm were shattered, and a miserable cry instantly came from his mouth. Ah! Du Xiaofu's pained scream had just sounded when he once again pounced on him. His fist once again landed on the former's chest. Like a human-shaped demonic beast crushing everything in its path, Du Xiaofu directly shattered his sternum and destroyed his internal organs. Third brother is actually so terrifying. Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu, dumbfounded. He never thought that his third brother's strength would be so terrifying. Not good. In the chaotic crowd, the monkey-cheeked man saw that the situation was not good. He immediately retreated quietly, wanting to retreat into the cave behind him. Bao Kongyue, you betrayed the Star Dragon Gang, killed the president, and so many brothers of the Star Dragon Gang. Today, I will not let you go. Du Yunlong's figure rushed out. He had been secretly staring at Bao Kongyue. Coldness surged in his eyes, and he appeared in front of Bao Kongyue like lightning. Commander Du, the Star Dragon Gang no longer exists. Listen to me. Joining the Dongxing Hall is better than staying in the Star Dragon Gang. At that time, we will be brothers again. Bao Kongyue looked at Du Yunlong and squeezed out a smile. How can I, Du Yunlong, be brothers with someone like you? Du Yunlong shouted coldly. He stomped his feet on the ground and directly pounced on Bao Kongyue. His profound chi surged, and the surrounding profound chi waves rolled. Du Yunlong, do you really think you can do anything to me? Bao Kongyue shouted coldly. A strange short knife in his hand cut through the air. White profound chi surged, and the knife light shot out like a flash of white lightning. It carried a strong wind that caused the space to fluctuate, and directly stabbed at Du Yunlong in a vicious and fierce arc. Du Yunlong raised his eyebrows. Just as the vicious dagger was about to pierce his face, his body abruptly took a step back. Swish! The short knife carried a knife light that brushed past Du Yunlong's chest. The fierce knife light directly tore a hole in the cloud robe on his chest. However, Du Yunlong's face did not change much. In a flash, the dagger in his hand was accompanied by violent profound qi and directly stabbed out. Qi la. At such a close distance, the dagger directly pierced into Bao Kongyue's lower abdomen. Puchi. Bao Kongyue spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with fear and disbelief. His body rapidly retreated, and blood flowed from his lower abdomen. He muttered softly, "Impossible, how can you kill me? This is impossible, because I know you too well, so I can kill you. But you don't know much about me, so you can't win against me." Du Yunlong's figure once again appeared in front of Bao Kongyue. The knife light on the dagger in his hand shot out, and a cold light overflowed. He waved his hand and drew an arc, directly cutting Bao Kongyue's throat. The dagger hidden on his right wrist had always been Du Yunlong's trump card. Everyone who knew Du Yunlong thought that Du Yunlong's greatest weapon was his saber. But in fact, other than his saber, Du Yunlong had a final trump card. The dagger on his right wrist would not be used unless it was a matter of life and death. This dagger had always been Du Yunlong's final killing move. Qi la, the dagger slashed across Bao Kongyue's throat, causing a bloody mist to splatter out. Bao Kongyue immediately covered his throat with one hand. He could no longer speak, and his body fell backwards. Bao Kongyue did not expect that he would fall into Du Yunlong's hands like this. If he had been more careful, Du Yunlong's cultivation would have been similar to his. It would have been difficult for Du Yunlong to kill him, but it was too late for regrets now. Roar! Not far away, a tiger's roar shook the sky. After several exchanges, the king-scaled demonic tiger finally found an opportunity. Its pair of tiger claws tore apart the pulse soul phantoms that Lu Zhangming and Qiu Shan had activated. Puchi! Lu Zhangming and Qiu Shan both spat out blood. Their eyes were filled with fear. They did not expect that even with the two of them working together, they would still be unable to do anything to the king-scaled demonic tiger. Mysterious pulse soul stage, retreat first. Lu Zhangming's body floated in the air as he shouted. The strength of this king-scaled demonic tiger was much stronger than he had imagined. There was simply no way for him to contend against it, and he immediately wanted to retreat. How could the king-scaled demonic tiger allow the two of them to escape? Back then, 3 cultivators at the initial level of the Pulse Soul stage had joined forces and were killed by it. Now, there were only 2 of them. Roar! The tiger's mouth ferociously roared, and its huge wings flapped. It was as fast as lightning, and a wing fiercely slapped Lu Zhangming's body with a violent storm, sweeping his body into the air. Chi la la! In a short moment, the king-scaled demonic tiger's huge tiger claws once again ruthlessly pressed down on Lu Zhangming's body, which was sent flying. A bloody hole appeared on his chest, and fresh blood flowed out. In the end, he was directly swallowed into the ferocious tiger's mouth. Not good, run! Seeing Lu Zhangming being swallowed alive by the king-scaled demonic tiger, Qiu Shan was already trembling with fear. He did not dare to fight back. His profound qi suddenly surged, and he hurriedly flew into the air, wishing that he could be faster. However, how could the king-scaled demonic tiger let Qiu Shan go? It flapped its wings and chased after him as fast as lightning. It would not take long for it to catch up. Run, run quickly. The hall master has escaped, run quickly. Around the cave, all the disciples of Dongxing Hall immediately fled in panic. The hall master had already fled for his life, so who would dare to fight back? Du Xiaofu also stopped attacking. He had no interest in chasing after Qiu Shan. His eyebrows slightly twitched, and he looked at the entrance of the cave not far away. Using his mental energy, he could see that the cave was constantly fluctuating with energy waves, and there seemed to be a faint multicolored light that was beginning to spread out. Third brother, this is the expert's cave that I found back then. Du Yunlong came to Du Xiaofu's side. Let's go in and have a look. Du Xiaofu said, and then he and Du Yunlong walked into the cave. Inside the cavern, there were thick rocks all around. It was unknown how these caverns were formed. When Du Yunlong entered the cave, he looked at the cave entrance that was a few meters in size in front of him. His eyes suddenly showed a dignified expression, and he said nervously, "This cave entrance was originally sealed, but now the seal is gone. Could it be that someone has beaten us to it? Let's go in first. Be careful." Du Xiaofu said to Du Yunlong. From the cave entrance, Du Xiaofu could feel that there were energy waves coming from the cave, and the multicolored light was faintly surging and becoming more and more dazzling. Then Du Xiaofu walked in front, and Du Yunlong followed behind. The two of them carefully walked into the cave. Inside the cave entrance that was a few meters in size, it was a completely different world. There was a huge area inside, as if a huge mountain had been hollowed out. Heavens, what is this place? The moment they stepped into the cave, Du Yunlong couldn't help but cry out in surprise. The inside of the cave was hazy, and the multicolored light was dazzling, like smoke. The multicolored light came from a corner of the cave. On the rocky ground, there was a piece of sand that was dozens of feet in size. The dense sand shone with a golden light, and in the center of the sand, there was a small tree that was about 5 feet tall and the size of a small bowl. The branches and leaves were dense, and the light spread out, dazzling and resplendent. There was a fruit the size of a baby's fist on the small tree. It was sparkling with golden light, and runes covered the surface of the fruit. Its entire body was like a beautiful jade, and a faint fragrance filled the entire cavern, causing one to be unable to resist the urge to take a bite. The runes on its entire body shone with golden light, and the entire small tree seemed to be wrapped in golden flames. A wave of dense and surging spiritual energy rippled out, causing the profound energy and mental energy in one's body to be obstructed. This is the golden plum. Du Xiaofu stared blankly for a moment before he finally remembered. In the alchemy knowledge that Zhenqing Chun had taught him, he had introduced a large number of elixirs. Among them, there was an elixir called the golden plum, which was exactly the same as the fruit that was the size of a baby's fist. Chapter 141. The golden plum was an extremely rare high-grade elixir. It was enough to refine a noble-grade elixir, and its value was immeasurable. That is, Du Yunlong's gaze fell on the small tree that was surrounded by multicolored light. There was a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged there. His long hair reached his shoulders, his forehead was broad, and his chest was broad. He was very burly, and a 7-foot-long battle saber was stabbed into the rocky ground beside him. Under the illumination of the golden runes, the battle saber was also shining brightly. Swish! Suddenly, at this moment, a sharp sound of wind breaking suddenly came out, and a stream of light broke through the sky like lightning, sweeping straight towards Du Yunlong. "Second brother, be careful!" Du Xiaofu shouted. His figure immediately blocked in front of Du Yunlong. He formed a hand seal, and his index and middle fingers came together. Faint golden profound qi condensed on his fingertips, and a finger seal shot out. It collided with the ray of light in a flash. Whoosh! The two collided, and the surrounding air fluctuated. At the same time, a deep sonic boom resounded. Du Xiaofu's body only took one step back. Thud thud. A figure suddenly appeared. He staggered back a few steps, and a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. A soul symbol master at the peak of the 3-star perfection level. Du Xiaofu's gaze immediately fell on the newcomer. It was an old man in a loose robe who was slightly over 50 years old. His gaze was somewhat gloomy. From the aura he had just released, this person was actually a soul symbol master. Moreover, he was an extraordinary soul symbol master with the cultivation of the 3-star perfection level. Third brother, this person is Elder Tu Qianqi from the White Tiger sect. He is a soul symbol master and is proficient in symbol arrays. He is quite famous in the entire Lanling Prefecture city. Du Yunlong's expression became serious again. A soul symbol master, and an array symbol master among soul symbol masters, was extremely extraordinary. I didn't expect you two to barge in. Where is Zhou Shan and the rest? Looking at Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong, Tu Qianqi from the White Tiger sect was slightly surprised. Based on the fact that the purple-robed youth had withstood his finger, his strength was not weak. Looks like you were the one who broke the seal on the cave entrance. Du Xiaofu looked at Tu Qianqi. There were still traces of the seal above the cave. This person was also a talisman master. The seal at the entrance of the cave was naturally undone by him. That's right. Where is Zhou Shan and the rest? They're all dead. As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, he did not delay any further. His entire body was instantly enveloped by a pale golden halo. His body was like a pale golden lightning as he directly swept towards Tu Qianqi. As a soul symbol master himself, Du Xiaofu naturally knew the weakness of a soul symbol master. He could not give this person any chance to prepare. He had to strike first to gain the upper hand. Stormy Wave's palm. As his figure rapidly pounced towards Tu Qianqi, Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed. At the same time, the Stormy Wave's palm was activated. A terrifying palm print swept out like a surging wave, instantly crushing towards Tu Qianqi. Brat, you're courting death. Tu Qianqi's gaze darkened. He did not expect this purple-robed youth to take the initiative to attack. As his hand seals changed, waves of rune energy suddenly fluctuated, transforming into a huge vortex of light that directly resisted Du Xiaofu's palm print. Qi. The palm print was resisted by the rune energy halo. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's Stormy Wave's palm also paused for a short moment, unable to break through the rune energy's resistance. A pale golden light surged in Du Xiaofu's eyes. As his hand seals changed, mysterious qi poured into the palm print, and waves of runes surged out. Break! Accompanied by a loud shout, a violent burst of energy erupted from Du Xiaofu's palm print, once again fiercely colliding with the rune energy halo. Bang! A deep sonic boom suddenly sounded from the center of the rune energy halo. A wave of spatial ripples suddenly spread out like a storm, finally spreading out in all directions. Dang dang, Tu Qianqi's body trembled violently, and his footsteps hurriedly retreated. Every step he took, cracks would appear on the ground beneath his feet. After a few continuous steps, a muffled groan came from his throat. Finally, his foot fiercely stomped on the ground, shattering the rocks beneath his feet into tiny fragments. Only then did his body stabilize his retreat. Complete Xiantian stage, how is this possible? When he raised his head to look at Du Xiaofu, shock gushed out from Tu Qianqi's eyes. As a soul talisman master, his mental energy was extraordinary. He could clearly feel that the purple-robed youth was only a complete Xiantian stage practitioner, but his strength had reached such a terrifying level. Du Xiaofu was not surprised that he had suppressed Tu Qianqi. After all, a soul talisman master's physical training could not be compared to a warrior's, just like how a warrior's mental energy could not be compared to a soul talisman master's. Of course, this was on the premise that the abnormal person was an exception. Everything had a special exception, but under normal circumstances, nothing would go wrong. Ka! Tapping his foot on the ground, Du Xiaofu once again pounced towards Tu Qianqi. The more time he gave the other party to breathe, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Kid, you're not enough. In this short moment, Tu Qianqi's astonished gaze turned gloomy, and a chill shot out. 11 formation flags suddenly condensed in his palms, and an astonishing fluctuation immediately spread out. 3-star symbol array. As the 11 formation flags condensed in Tu Qianqi's hands, Du Xiaofu's figure also paused. Not far away, Du Yunlong's expression also changed. To anyone, a symbol array was something that they did not want to touch. Mysterious rain frenzy formation. Tu Qianqi sneered and shouted. At the same time, his complexion immediately paled, but the sneer on his face became more and more intense. Just as the 11 formation flags condensed in his palms, all the energy in his body was also poured into the 11 formation flags. Kid, both of you can go to hell. With a wave of his hand, the 11 formation flags in Tu Qianqi's palms immediately swept towards the space where Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong were. With a lightning-like speed and trajectory, the formation flags enveloped the two of them, including the huge cavern. Boom! When the 11 formation flags finally disappeared in the air in the entire cavern suddenly fluctuated violently. The space trembled, and in a short moment, a gale whistled. There were faint signs of lightning and thunder, and an extraordinary symbol array suddenly appeared in the cavern. The space around Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong changed, as if they had appeared in the middle of a downpour. The rainstorm fell from the sky, and once it touched their bodies, it immediately caused the profound energy in their bodies to stagnate and dissipate. Third brother, we've been trapped by the symbol array. What should we do? Du Yunlong's expression changed greatly. As a warrior, he knew nothing about symbol arrays. At this moment, he didn't have the strength to directly destroy this strange symbol array with his powerful strength. He could only use the profound energy halo around his body to resist the erosion of the strange rainstorm. Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in a light golden halo of runes, and he didn't fear the rainstorm inside the symbol array at all. He looked around the symbol array, and a big smile appeared on his face. He said softly, "This symbol array is much weaker than a 4-star symbol array. If this guy had not broken the seal outside the cavern, the power of this symbol array would be much greater. However, after breaking the seal outside the cavern, this guy has pretty much used up all of his energy. The power of this symbol array is less than 50 to 60%. As his voice fell, waves of rune energy began to spread out from Du Xiaofu's hands, and the runes spread all around. This is a soul symbol master. Heavens, third brother is also a soul symbol master. Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu's hand seals condensing in front of him. Amidst the fluctuations of rune energy, his face was shocked. His jaw dropped, and he was unable to close it for a long time. At this moment, from the aura that spread out from Du Xiaofu's body, Du Yunlong was absolutely certain that third brother was actually a soul symbol master, and a symbol array master among soul symbol masters. Within the cavern, the energy of the symbol array violently fluctuated. Tu Qianqi's pale face sneered. He would never allow anyone to take away the treasures within the cavern. His symbol array was enough to kill those two brats. Suddenly, the sneer on Tu Qianqi's face instantly turned into surprise, then shock. Within the talisman array, a terrifying energy was fluctuating. Subsequently, under Tu Qianqi's shocked gaze, the talisman array he'd set up directly exploded, boom. The violent energy swept out, causing the entire cavern to tremble violently. The symbol array was directly destroyed. Puchi. Tu Qianqi's shocked face revealed a look of fear. Blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth. He could not believe what had just happened. Whoosh! Amidst the destructive energy of the symbol array, a blurry purple-robed figure charged out like a ghost. A fist wrapped in a dazzling faint golden radiance mercilessly landed on Tu Qianqi's body. Bang bang bang! 13 fist seals rang out, and like thunder, they finally landed on Tu Qianqi's chest. Terrifying energy poured out in torrents. Following that, Tu Qianqi's figure flew out in a sorry state, ruthlessly crashing into the walls of the cavern. His vitality was destroyed, and he was directly killed. He's dead. Du Yunlong saw that Tu Qianqi had actually been killed by third brother, and his gaze was somewhat lifeless. Second brother, quickly pack up. We must leave as soon as possible. Du Xiaofu said to Du Yunlong. He took one of Tu Qianqi's Qiankuan pouches, and the two of them once again arrived in front of the golden sand and soil in front of the small tree that seemed to be wrapped in golden flames. This must be the expert that was rumored to have fallen. Du Yunlong's gaze fell on the middle-aged man who was sitting cross-legged. His gaze carried some fluctuations, as if there was an invisible aura that was connected to him, as if it was calling out to him. Chapter 142. Third brother, please wait. Du Yunlong pulled Du Xiaofu back and said, this elder must be the expert who fell in the 1,000 caves back then. No matter what, he is still an elder. We cannot be disrespectful. As his words fell, Du Yunlong directly knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to the middle-aged man sitting cross-legged under the shimmering little tree. He then stood up and saw Du Xiaofu smiling bitterly, saying, third brother, don't find second brother troublesome and long-winded. This is what eldest uncle and my father often teach us. We still have to understand some etiquette. Yes, Du Xiaofu nodded and also bowed 3 times to the middle-aged man sitting cross-legged in the distance. That's more like it. Let's go in. Only then did Du Yunlong nod his head in satisfaction. Let's pick the golden plum first. Du Xiaofu somewhat impatiently stepped onto the golden sandy ground, walking step by step towards the shimmering little tree. The majestic and dense spiritual medicine energy undulations caused Du Xiaofu's heart to beat along with the undulations. Du Yunlong's gaze was firmly fixed on the middle-aged man sitting cross-legged as he walked closer step by step. Suddenly, just as Du Yunlong stood in front of the middle-aged man sitting cross-legged, the middle-aged man whose eyes were tightly shut and who had long since lost all signs of life suddenly opened his eyes. Hula! A dazzling rune light burst out from his eyes, spreading out like lightning and directly enveloping Du Yunlong within. A terrifying energy undulation directly burrowed into the space between Du Yunlong's eyebrows. You are indeed a person who respects your teacher. Then, receive this emperor's inheritance. A clear voice suddenly rang out from within the expanding rune light circle. As the voice fell, the rune light that filled the sky was so dazzling that it was like a ball of light, enveloping Du Yunlong within. Second brother. Du Xiaofu was shocked and worried in his heart. He did not expect such a sudden change and did not know what to do. Qi. Right at this moment, a palm-sized golden stream of light shot out from the golden sand and stone ground. After that, it shot towards Jin Zhongli, who was glowing with multicolored light. Who stole my golden plum? Du Xiaofu immediately regained his senses and shouted loudly. A beam of energy gushed out from his left hand, striking towards the golden ray of light. At the same time, his right hand directly plucked the golden plum under the little tree. Bang! When the energy collided with the golden light, a muffled sound rang out. However, it only managed to deflect the golden light slightly. After that, it once again shot towards the Jin Zhongli in Du Xiaofu's right hand. Du Xiaofu hurriedly retreated, dodging the golden light. Not good. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu's expression changed. In this short period of time, the golden plum, which had just landed in his palm, suddenly melted and turned into a ball of viscous golden energy. A surge of elixir energy suddenly erupted, making it difficult for Du Xiaofu to breathe. Bastard, you ruined my elixir. I have waited for 10 whole years. Bastard, the golden plum cannot be touched by human hands. From within the golden ray of light, a tender voice rang out. The voice was gnashing its teeth, as if it was going crazy. Qi. At the same time as the voice rang out, the golden ray of light once again shot towards Du Xiaofu. It wanted to snatch the golden plum from Du Xiaofu's right hand. I don't care who you are. You can't snatch what I have. Du Xiaofu shouted. At the same time, he slapped the golden plum in his right hand into his mouth and sucked it clean. He directly swallowed the golden plum. Let's see who else can snatch it. Bastard, you're a human. How can you directly swallow the golden plum? My elixir, I have waited for 10 whole years. The tender voice inside the golden ray of light cursed. It roared and cursed crazily. However, it seemed that it could no longer support itself. It floated in the air and directly fell down. It could no longer jump back up. However, within the golden light, there was still a frantic young voice cursing, "You stupid human, you will explode and die. I will wait for you to explode and die. Then, the golden plum will still be mine." What a powerful energy! After Du Xiaofu swallowed the golden plum, a terrifying energy that was beyond Du Xiaofu's imagination suddenly exploded. After the golden plum entered Du Xiaofu's stomach, it was like a dazzling golden sun. There were runes flickering and a huge amount of energy seeped out. Boom! The huge amount of energy seeped out from the golden plum and directly rushed into Du Xiaofu's internal organs, blood vessels, meridians, skin, flesh, muscles, and bones. Ah, this energy was too huge and surging. Du Xiaofu's internal organs, meridians, and bones were unable to withstand this surging energy. It was as if everything in his body was about to be destroyed. The intense pain caused Du Xiaofu to scream. "Refine!" As he screamed, Du Xiaofu could no longer care about anything else. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to refine the huge amount of golden plum energy in his body using the golden rocks cultivation method. After refining with the golden rocks cultivation method, the refined energy turned into profound energy and passed through Du Xiaofu's meridians. Finally, it entered the god's watchtower in his stomach. However, under the impact of the boundless energy, Du Xiaofu's body was still in pain. If it was any other peak Xiantian realm cultivator, they would have exploded and died from the impact of the energy. Not long after, Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a layer of faint golden energy. He was completely immersed in refining the energy of the golden plum in his body. Under the refinement of the golden rocks cultivation method, the surging energy contained in the golden plum endlessly turned into profound energy and surged into Du Xiaofu's god's watchtower. It also nourished his limbs, bones, and muscles. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger walked into the cave. Blood dripped from its mouth. It was obvious that it had chased after Qiu Shan. The king-scaled demonic tiger looked at everything in the cave with its fierce eyes. It was immediately puzzled. Why is there still a demonic beast? It seems to be a king-scaled demonic tiger at the mysterious pulse spirit realm. On the golden sand, a childish voice came from the golden stream of light. It seemed to be afraid of something. The light immediately dimmed a little and began to lie dormant within the golden sand. There were no fluctuations of aura, and it was difficult to discover its existence. Finally, the king-scaled demonic tiger seemed to have seen the general changes in Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong. It knew that the two of them seemed to have obtained some kind of benefit. The tiger's eyes moved slightly, and then it retreated to the entrance of the cave and lay down, vigilantly observing everything in the surroundings. Time slowly passed. The golden plum spirit liquid that Du Xiaofu had swallowed seemed to have an endless amount of energy overflowing. It covered his muscles, bones, and organs, nourishing his bones. The refined profound energy had already gradually filled his god's watchtower. The aura on his body also continued to rise until it reached the peak of the complete Xiantian realm. There were faint signs that he was about to break through. Compress. I can't break through. I have to build a good foundation. Du Xiaofu's consciousness remained clear. He definitely couldn't break through too early. He had to build a good foundation between the Xiantian realm and the pulsating realm. For cultivators, the temptation and pleasure of breaking through was something that ordinary people couldn't resist in front of the absolute temptation of increasing their strength. Du Xiaofu remembered Jin Qingquan's words. He couldn't let himself break through too early. He had to resist the temptation of breaking through and build a good foundation. He continuously compressed the profound energy within his god's watchtower. The energy of the golden plum in his body continuously nourished his organs, limbs, and bones. How can this human be fine? How can it be like this? Within the golden sand, a childish and doubtful voice came from the dormant ball of faint golden light. At night, a crescent moon gradually rose into the sky. A transparent gray cloud faintly covered the moonlight. The sky above the stone city seemed to be covered in a layer of smoke. It was as if one had fallen into a dreamland. In a continuous courtyard, in a large hall, a burly man with a stocky back and a bear's waist stared at several frightened and pale men with bright eyes. He shouted, "What did you say?" "Elder Lu was killed." "Who did it?" "One is Du Yunlong from the Star Dragon gang. There's also a purple-robed youth and a king-scaled demonic tiger in the pulse spirit realm. That demonic tiger was too strong. We weren't its match. Elder Lu was also swallowed by that demonic tiger." A burly man said with lingering fear. "Then what about Elder Jiu?" The burly man asked in a deep voice. "Elder Jiu was breaking the seal outside the cave. We don't know what happened after that." Another young man said with a trembling voice. The burly man's face darkened slightly. He said in a low voice, "Could it be that there's really a place where an expert died? It seems like I have to go take a look myself." "Sect Master, so many days have passed. Isn't it a little too late for us to go now?" In the hall, an old man in his 60s stood up and said. "It's still unknown whether Elder Jiu is dead or alive. Even if it's a king-scaled demonic tiger in the pulse spirit realm, if Elder Jiu set up a talisman array, he should be able to hold on for some time. I have to go take a look." The burly man's face darkened. "Father, I'll go with you." In the hall, a burly young man walked out. His broad chest and chest muscles bulged slightly. It was He Jun of the Lanling Four Young Masters. "How are your injuries?" the burly man asked the young man. There was a hint of gentleness in his eyes. "It's nothing serious. They're all superficial wounds. That kid didn't hit me too hard." He Jun said with a bitter smile. It's midnight. Little Yu is continuing to write. Chapter 143. I've already investigated. That Du Xiaofu is from the Lanling Palace. If you meet him in the future, avoid him. It's best if we don't provoke the Lanling Palace. The burly man said to He Jun, since you're fine now, follow me to the 1,000 caves. I heard that a demonic tiger appeared in the city not long ago. It seems to be related to the Lanling Palace. I wonder if that demonic tiger has anything to do with the 1,000 caves. After an unknown amount of time, Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in a faint golden light within the cave. His entire body was emitting surging waves of energy. There was a faint rumbling sound coming from his body, as if a river was roaring and surging. The surface of his skin had talisman markings flashing and gushing out. The energy around him was becoming more and more intense. I can't suppress it anymore. I'm about to break through. The energy in Du Xiaofu's body was violently fluctuating. The Xian Qi energy in the spirit gate had already been suppressed 9 times. After the 10th time, it could no longer be suppressed. Jin Zhongli's energy was too vast, and there was still an endless stream of energy that had not been refined. He was about to break through to the pulsating realm, and could no longer suppress it. The pulsating realm. From the name, one would know the meaning of this realm. It was closely related to the martial vein. For martial artists, stepping into the innate realm from the acquired realm meant that they had truly stepped into the realm of martial artists. When one reached the pulsating realm, it was another dividing line. The pulsating realm and the innate realm had a substantial difference. The innate realm was to open the spirit gate and condense Xian Qi. The pulsating realm was to open the martial vein and use the power of the martial vein. The martial vein was the most important to a martial artist's cultivation. The importance of the martial vein to a martial artist would be completely revealed at the pulsating realm. Opening the martial vein and condensing the vein spirit was something that needed to be done at the pulsating realm. It was also a very important realm on the path of martial arts cultivation. At the pulsating realm, the first thing to do was to prepare the vain spirit. Generally speaking, the vain spirit was opened with the blood essence of demonic beasts. The higher the grade of the demonic beasts used, the better the effect. The higher the grade of the martial vein, the more powerful it would be in the pulsating realm. If the martial vein was not high, the blood essence of demonic beasts used would be too high, and the martial vein would be destroyed. Therefore, the grade of the martial vein showed its importance from the very beginning. By using the blood essence of a demonic beast to open the martial vein and condense the vain spirit, one would be able to communicate with the martial vein and activate the power of the martial vein, condensing the vain spirit beast shadow. This was almost the strongest method a martial artist could use. The power of the pulse soul was enormous, and it was not weaker than the combat strength of the body. However, if the pulse soul was damaged, the body would also be severely injured. Therefore, when he activated the arterial spirit, it meant that he was already attacking with all his might. Among the myriad of creatures in the world, the human race was actually abnormally small and weak. Even cultivators were a bit weaker when compared to monstrous beasts of the same level. It was said that in ancient times, the ancestors of the human race worshipped those powerful beasts. When the human race was still very weak, they even worshipped some powerful beasts as totems. The ancients would also carve powerful beasts into tattoos and brand them on their bodies, hoping that they would be able to obtain that kind of powerful strength. Over time, some extraordinary human pioneers comprehended some of the mysteries of heaven and earth and were able to start cultivating. After that, he fused the blood essence of the demonic beasts into his own cultivation. The human race gradually started to rise. At that time, it was rumored that the world was in turmoil, and 10,000 races were fighting for hegemony. Just like that, after an unknown amount of time, the cultivators of this world reached their current level of cultivation. It was rumored that no matter if it was a human or a demonic beast, they all had 3 souls and 7 spirits. The first soul was the heaven soul, the second was the earth soul, and the third was the life soul. There were 7 spirits. The first was the heaven soul, the second was the earth soul, and the third was the life soul. There were 7 spirits, the first was the heaven soul, the second was the earth soul, and the third was the life soul. The 7 spirits were hidden within the blood. By using the blood essence of a demonic beast to open the martial vein and condense the pulse soul, the martial vein would fuse with the 7 spirits of the demonic beast, and from there, one could obtain the power of the demonic beast. A martial artist's pulse soul was closely related to the demonic beast. It was said that a martial artist could be extremely close to the demonic beast that was related to their pulse soul. Even comprehending the divine abilities of the demonic beast with the pulse soul would be much easier. Therefore, to cultivators who were preparing to break through to the pulsation realm, choosing which demonic beast to become the pulse soul was absolutely an extremely important matter. However, choosing which demonic beast to become the pulse soul was also related to the grade of the martial vein. More importantly, it was related to the faction behind it. Those powerful monstrous beasts were definitely not easy to obtain. There were even some cultivators with extraordinary martial veins who did not have a strong backing behind them. In the end, they could only obtain the blood essence of ordinary monstrous beasts to open their martial veins and condense their vain spirit. However, at that moment, Du Xiaofu did not need to prepare the blood essence of demonic beasts for his breakthrough. It was because Du Xiaofu's cultivation method was the cultivation method of the golden-winged Great Peng. In this cultivation method, there was no need to prepare the blood essence of demonic beasts to open the martial veins, nor was there a pulse soul. Other demonic beasts also did not cultivate martial veins and pulse souls. This was clearly different from the cultivation method of humans. Humans yearned for the power of demonic beasts because demonic beasts were indeed stronger than humans in terms of strength. Of course, this did not mean that humans were weaker than demonic beasts. Otherwise, the human race would not have been able to multiply to such an extent. Under normal circumstances, humans were weaker than demonic beasts in terms of strength. However, in terms of comprehension and wisdom, humans had the advantage as a whole. Even the human body was the most suitable for cultivation. Therefore, when they reached the Beast King realm, some demonic beast experts would transform into a human form and cultivate with the most suitable body. Although demonic beasts did not have the ability to open their martial veins and condense their beast souls, the pulsation realm was extremely important to both demonic beasts and humans. It involved the foundation and future cultivation. If one could establish a good foundation in the pulsation realm, their entire cultivation realm would be elevated. The benefits were enormous. The aura within Du Xiaofu's body rose to a new height. Many golden talisman patterns began to surge out from his body. A powerful and domineering aura surged out from the golden talisman patterns around Du Xiaofu's body. The profound energy within his God's Gate had already reached an uncontrollable stage. Rings of golden light surrounded his body, illuminating the entire cave with golden light. Within the golden light, countless talisman patterns flickered. The talisman patterns carried the terrifying aura of the golden-winged Great Rock clan, enough to make all beasts tremble. Roar! Inside the cave, the king-scaled demonic tiger also felt the terrifying aura. As it looked at the rings of talisman patterns, fear surged out from its tiger eyes. When the last of the densely packed talisman patterns behind Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged, condensed into the image of a golden-winged great rock, the terrifying aura around him reached its peak. The image seemed to have been injected with life. It wanted to spread its wings and soar into the sky like a living creature. Strange. Could it be that this brat is not a human, but a golden-winged great rock? Within the golden sand, the faint golden light once again emitted a childish voice of surprise. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's aura was still rising. Du Xiaofu was also once again immersed in a strange state. In this state, everything in his body began to transform. The talisman patterns on the surface of his body began to fuse into his flesh and blood. They began to evolve and transform continuously, and finally took root and sprouted. These talisman patterns were like seeds sown in the soil, growing vigorously. Du Xiaofu's body, which was sitting cross-legged, was wrapped by the talisman patterns around his body. The image of the golden-winged great rock circled above his head and behind his back. At this moment, his entire body was transforming continuously. There was an indescribable feeling all over his body. This feeling connected to his entire body, and the talisman patterns took root and sprouted in Du Xiaofu's body. His limbs, bones, flesh, and meridians were all resonating with the talisman patterns. Du Xiaofu's entire body made clanging sounds, and every bone in his body was transforming. All these changes made Du Xiaofu feel that he was about to become a truly terrifying golden-winged great rock. During these changes, Du Xiaofu could clearly feel that his body was becoming stronger and stronger. Whether it was his resistance to energy or his agility, they were all greatly increasing. Du Xiaofu once again gained insight into many of the golden-winged great rock's secret techniques through these changes. His body and the golden-winged great rock's image were connected, as if the two were about to merge into one. The golden-winged great rock's image was its spirit, and his body, which was sitting cross-legged, was its form. From the inside to the outside, and from the outside to the inside, they were fusing and transforming at the same time. The aura on his body also became more domineering and awe-inspiring, showing an extraordinary state. Becoming stronger, and constantly becoming stronger, Du Xiaofu's aura finally reached a peak. At this moment, the talisman patterns on Du Xiaofu's body also spread over his entire body. They were densely covered in multicolored light, domineering and awe-inspiring, just like the sun. The golden-winged great rock's image behind him flapped its wings and circled around, changing unpredictably. A terrifying pressure swept out, causing the entire cave to rumble and tremble. Bursts of auspicious light shook the entire cave. Ascending to the pulsation realm, break. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu roared loudly. The talisman patterns on his body flickered, and all the profound energy in his body rushed into the god's watchtower below his abdomen. The golden-winged great rock's image behind him roared at this moment, as if thunder was rumbling. A formless barrier was easily broken through by Du Xiaofu. After being compressed 9 times, this was the 10th time that the barrier was easily broken through. Bang! A muffled sound came from within the god's watchtower. Du Xiaofu's heart was in turmoil, and the profound energy within the god's watchtower was like a vast ocean. In an instant, Du Xiaofu felt as if he had climbed to a new level. A powerful force surged within his body. This kind of power was many times stronger than when he was at the perfected Xiantian realm. Whoosh! The golden-winged great rock's image turned into talisman patterns, as if they had fused into Du Xiaofu's body. It caused crackling sounds to ring out from Du Xiaofu's body, and a domineering golden light flickered incessantly. Chapter 144. Roar. At the entrance of the cave, the king-scaled demonic tiger let out a low roar. Its gaze immediately turned towards the outside of the cave. As if it had discovered something, its body immediately pounced out of the cave. How can this be? This guy is not human, is he a golden-winged rock? I've waited for 10 years, the Jin Zhongli must not be taken away by this guy. I must take it back. Within the golden sand, after the king-scaled demonic tiger left, the faint golden glow suddenly fluctuated. Then, it transformed into a ray of light and viciously shot towards Du Xiaofu's head, who was completely unaware of what was happening. Boom! This golden light was the size of a palm. It was unknown what it was, but its aura was extremely powerful. It looked like it was about to slam heavily onto Du Xiaofu's head. Just at this moment, something seemed to have awakened within Du Xiaofu's body. A large patch of mysterious light suddenly erupted, and one after another, mysterious light jumped out from within his body. Chi 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 chi. These mysterious lights were somewhat turbid, but they were connected to his meridians and blood vessels. At an extremely fast speed, they crisscrossed and condensed together, transforming into a net of light that directly covered Du Xiaofu's body. A terrifying aura also spread out in an instant. This kind of terrifying aura was not the slightest bit inferior to that of the golden-winged rock just now. Chi! The golden light that was slapping towards Du Xiaofu was immediately enveloped by the mysterious net of light, and then trapped within. Martial Vein Spirit Seal. The Martial Vein has formed a spirit seal. Is this guy a golden-winged rock or a human? What kind of martial vein is this? How can it form a martial vein spirit seal? Only the most terrifying of humans can have such a martial vein. This is going to be troublesome. Within the golden light, the voice became shocked. Then, it tried to struggle free from the mysterious net of light, but no matter how hard it struggled, it was unable to escape. The mysterious net of light grew tighter and tighter. The rays of light were like steel wires, as if they wanted to cut the golden light into pieces. The mysterious rays of light were about to strangle the golden light into pieces. Not good, the martial vein is going to self-awaken. This is really troublesome. Who the hell is this kid? Within the golden light, the tender voice was filled with fear and dread. As the golden light erupted, mysterious talisman runes began to appear, causing the aura to become more and more terrifying. Chi la la. However, no matter how the golden light struggled, it gradually shrank under the cover of the mysterious light net. It was firmly trapped, as if it was suffering the most terrifying suppression. Under this kind of suppression, the mystical net of light was like a thin steel wire. Then, the net of light began to strangle the golden light, as if it wanted to cut the golden light apart. Ouch! What kind of martial vein is this? How could it be so strong? I'm in big trouble. The childish voice from the golden light sounded again, as if it was suffering from some kind of pain. Chi! On the mystical light net, liquid began to flow out from the golden light. This liquid was extremely special. It was brightly colored, and it was filled with mysterious runes. Inside the colorful liquid, the energy fluctuations seemed to be able to resonate with the energy of heaven and earth. It was extremely terrifying. As the colorful liquid flowed out, it was just like fresh blood. Then, it was continuously absorbed by the mystical light net. As the colorful liquid was absorbed by the mystical light net, it caused the mystical light net to become increasingly bright. It was as if it had been given life, as if something was beginning to awaken, and there was a will that wanted to awaken. This is a huge loss. This kid is too hateful. I'm not done with you. The childish voice sounded out. It was already on the verge of collapse. Finally, within the golden light, there was a sudden surge of energy light that rushed towards the sky. This light was also brightly colored. A terrifying aura crazily rose, before it became berserk. It actually faintly wanted to break free from the shackles of the mystical light net. Chi! Finally, the golden light broke free from the shackles and wrapping of the mystical light net. Finally, it landed on the golden sand nearby. The dazzling golden light began to fade, becoming dim. Finally, the light completely disappeared, and a palm-sized bronze-colored stone was revealed. As the bronze-colored stone that was wrapped in golden light broke free from Du Xiaofu's body, the mystical light net also gradually disappeared. However, the colorful liquid followed the mystical light net and entered Du Xiaofu's body. In a daze, Du Xiaofu's consciousness felt as if something in his body had come alive. It was as if something was being born, evolving, and finally condensing within his body. Inside the cave, the dazzling rune halos around Du Yunlong's body gradually receded. When the last of the rune halos entered his body, an extremely vigorous and powerful aura swept out from within his body, causing the entire cave to shake. Chi. Opening his eyes, Du Yunlong's eyes flashed. At this moment, the aura on his body had actually broken through from the pulsating realm's profound realm to the complete pulsating realm. This kind of breakthrough speed clearly surprised Du Yunlong. He silently felt the changes in his body. Everything was different from before. The profound energy that filled the God's Gate in his body made him want to roar and release it. The moment he opened his eyes, Du Yunlong seemed to have sensed something, and his gaze abruptly shifted to the side. Old Third, this is... Du Yunlong was shocked. At this moment, he could see that behind Du Xiaofu's back, an illusory mountain peak extended out. If he looked carefully, he could see that this illusory mountain peak was formed by 5 mountain peaks. The 5 mountain peaks were like palms, uneven in height. The mountain peak in the middle was the tallest, the first mountain peak was the thickest, and the last mountain peak was the smallest. It was like a real 5-finger mountain. The illusory 5-finger mountain was born behind Du Xiaofu's back. It evolved, condensed, and was endowed with life. It produced dense spiritual energy, connected with the energy of heaven and earth, and was endlessly profound. A terrifying power extended out, causing Du Yunlong to have difficulty breathing. His body couldn't help but tremble violently. Initial pulsating realm. Could this be Old Third's pulse spirit? Why is Old Third's pulse spirit a mountain? Du Yunlong was shocked. He only just found out that Old Third was only at the initial pulsating realm. Looking at the situation, it seemed like he had just broken through to the initial pulsating realm. Du Yunlong had never seen such a shocking phenomenon before. He had never even heard of it. How could someone's pulse spirit not be a demonic beast, but a mountain? However, Du Yunlong could clearly feel the extraordinariness and power of the illusory mountain. That 5-finger mountain was definitely not an ordinary object. Du Xiaofu's eyes were still tightly shut. Everything was extremely profound. It was as if something was crisscrossing inside his body, evolving, condensing, and being endowed with life. It produced dense spiritual energy, connected with the energy of heaven and earth, and a multicolored light spread throughout the cave. Roar! Outside the cave, a tiger's roar rumbled. The sound of energy explosion resounded through the sky. Could it be that someone is coming? Du Yunlong's eyes twitched. His expression suddenly changed as he looked outside the cave. Chi. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also seemed to have felt something. The illusory mountain behind him turned into a symbol and entered his body. He opened his eyes. In his deep and clear eyes, a domineering aura flickered. The aura of the initial pulsating realm swept out. "Old Third, how are you?" Du Yunlong stood up and asked Du Xiaofu nervously. There was some worry on his face. "I'm fine." "Second brother, how are you?" Du Xiaofu immediately stood up. He felt as if everything in his body had undergone another baptism. His body had undergone a transformation, and he had finally broken through to the pulsating realm. As for Jin Zhongli's energy, it seemed that he had not completely refined it. There was still a lot of energy left in his body, waiting to be refined. The abundant energy in his body made Du Xiaofu realize that his strength had definitely increased several times compared to before. "I received this senior's inheritance and also broke through to the complete pulsating realm. It's a long story. I'll tell you in detail later," Du Yunlong said. "Congratulations, second brother." Du Xiaofu was happy for his second brother, Du Yunlong. He did not expect his second brother to receive an inheritance. This kind of inheritance was also dependent on luck. Since he did not receive it, it meant that his luck was not as good as his second brother's. An inheritance was not purely an inanimate object. It would automatically choose a suitable person to carry it. Du Xiaofu did not have the slightest bit of regret. First of all, this inheritance was his second brother's, and second of all, it was useless for him to receive it. Moreover, he had also received Jin Zhongli. What is this? It seems to have something to do with me." After Du Xiaofu's voice fell, his gaze fell on the sand beneath his feet. For some reason, the originally golden sand had already dimmed and turned into ordinary sand. Even the small tree that originally bore Jin Zhongli had withered. There was no energy fluctuation or vitality. It was not much different from ordinary dead wood. At this moment, a palm-sized bronze stone in the sand attracted Du Xiaofu's attention. What a strange stone. Du Xiaofu picked up the bronze-colored stone and placed it in his palm. This stone was shaped like a five-fingered mountain. It was the size of a palm, but it was extremely heavy. It was a little prickly to the touch. This stone is not ordinary. If it was used to smash someone, it should be enough to break their head and make them bleed. Du Xiaofu thought to himself. He put away the bronze stone, then turned to Du Yunlong and said, "Second brother, there are people outside. Let's go take a look." "Third brother, wait for me." Du Yunlong walked in front of the war blade that was inserted into the ground and said softly, "1,000 kills, follow me from now on." As his voice faded, Du Yunlong grasped the long hilt of the 7-foot-long saber. The hilt of the saber was in the shape of a stick. Suddenly, a large number of runes bloomed on the 3-foot-long blade. The saber seemed to have come alive in an instant. Chapter 145. Wang, the war blade let out a long hum, its sound like wind and thunder. A terrifying aura instantly howled through the cavern, the light from the runes incomparably sharp. This is a practitioner weapon, it's actually a practitioner weapon. Du Xiaofu was shocked. This war blade that his second brother called 1,000 kills was actually a practitioner weapon. Generally speaking, even some pulse spirit realm practitioners would find it difficult to possess a spirit weapon. However, this war blade had actually reached the level of a practitioner weapon, and was even stronger than a spirit weapon. Good blade. Du Yunlong's face was filled with joy. His original war blade had been broken by Chou Jiang, and now this 1,000 kills seemed to have been specially prepared for him. A practitioner weapon war blade was priceless. If news of this were to spread, not only would it cause an uproar in Lanling Prefecture City, but even the entire empire would be shaken. Having a practitioner weapon was definitely enough to increase one's strength by quite a bit. Drip blood to bind. Du Yunlong's hand seals formed, and fresh blood dripped from his fingertips onto the 1,000 kills war blade. Immediately, the runes on the war blade surged violently, and a terrifying aura spread out, gradually calming down. Return. After the mystical hand seals formed, large amounts of runes landed on the 1,000 kills. After Du Yunlong's last hand seal formed, the 7-foot war blade turned into a ray of rune light, and disappeared into Du Yunlong's palm. Du Xiaofu was not surprised by this scene. Weapons at the spirit weapon level no longer needed to be stored in a Qiankun bag. Weapons at the spirit weapon level could be stored in the spirit watchtower and nourished with profound energy, just like how profound energy nourished the body's bones, muscles, and limbs. Only after being nourished with profound energy would a weapon become more compatible with its owner, and be used as if it was a part of the body. After being nourished in the spirit watchtower, there was even a chance for the spirit weapon to advance. Ka. As Du Yunlong put away the 1,000-kill warblade, the middle-aged skeleton that was sitting cross-legged suddenly emitted cracking sounds. Then, Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong's gazes changed, it turned into dust. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This is also good. I have received the inheritance and left behind by the senior, so I am your disciple. A disciple should bury the remains of his master. Du Yunlong said. Then, he buried the middle-aged man's bones in the thick layer of sand and dust. After he paid his respects, he turned to Du Xiaofu and said, "Third brother, let's go." Du Xiaofu nodded, and the two of them immediately left the cave. Just as the two of them were about to leave the cave, Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong did not notice that the entire cave, for some unknown reason, had begun to gently shake. Many small cracks had appeared on the surface of the stone walls. Outside the cave, dozens of figures stood in a cluster. All of their gazes were tightly fixed on the sky. At this moment, a burly man with a stocky back and a bare waist was wrapped in dazzling rune energy. Profound energy surged and swept out like a storm. In front of the burly man, there was a huge flying tiger that was over 20 feet long. It flapped its wings and circled in the air. A terrifying aura swept across the sky, causing people's hearts to tremble. Huff! The burly man took a deep breath and stared at the king-scaled demonic tiger that was circling in front of him. The king-scaled demonic tiger's cultivation was at the mysterious level of the pulse spirit realm. It was much stronger than he had imagined. He, who was at the perfect pulse spirit realm, couldn't do anything to it. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger roared and stared at the burly man. It suddenly flapped its wings, bringing with it a storm. Faint golden runes surged on its wings and its body pounced forward like lightning. A terrifying aura crushed the space, causing many muffled sounds to explode. In an instant, it arrived in front of the burly man. This king-scaled demonic tiger is so powerful. Astonishment flashed in the eyes of the burly man. Both of his hands suddenly bent and clenched into fists. His figure stomped on the air and a fist that was wrapped in profound energy light rippled. It was accompanied by a string of afterimages as it appeared in front of the king-scaled demonic tiger. The king-scaled demonic tiger's huge body swooped down. A huge tiger claw that was wrapped in a faint golden light tore through the air and directly smashed into the burly man's fist. Chi. The two figures suddenly stopped in the air. Under the ferocious power, the burly man's body was forced back a few steps. Only then was he able to completely block the terrifying power of the tiger claw. However, the king-scaled demonic tiger's huge body was also forced back. It flapped its wings and stabilized its body. With its mysterious level of the pulse spirit realm cultivation, it directly blocked the attack of the burly man, who was at the perfect pulse spirit realm. This king-scaled demonic tiger is so powerful. It's actually able to contend against the sect master. The expressions of the dozens of figures below changed. The strength of the king-scaled demonic tiger was absolutely terrifying. Looks like I'll have to use all my strength to deal with this evil creature. The burly man's eyes darkened slightly. Vigorous profound chi surged within his body, causing the surrounding energy in the air to fluctuate endlessly. His aura soared as he said to the people below, "All pulse spirit realm cultivators, attack together and take down this king-scaled demonic tiger first." Yes. 4 pulse spirit realm cultivators immediately rose into the air from the dozens of people below. 3 old men and a middle-aged woman surrounded the king-scaled demonic tiger. One of them was at the Nirvana Pulse Spirit Realm, one was at the mysterious level of the Pulse Spirit Realm, while the other two were at the initial Pulse Spirit Realm. The 4 auras surged, causing the king-scaled demonic tiger to instantly be surrounded and attacked. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger roared as a terrifying aura erupted. It was indescribably ferocious as it prepared to pounce. Attack! The 3 old men and the middle-aged woman directly joined forces to attack the king-scaled demonic tiger. Energy rushed out from all around as runes spread and enveloped the king-scaled demonic tiger. Rumble! The king-scaled demonic tiger flapped its wings, bringing about a surging storm. Faint golden runes flashed on its wings as a wild and ferocious power erupted, directly destroying the attacks of the 4 Pulse Spirit Realm cultivators. Evil creature! The burly man's body appeared behind the king-scaled demonic tiger like a ghost. A fist imprint light pillar rushed out, bringing with it a low and deep muffled sound as it ruthlessly landed on the king-scaled demonic tiger's back. Bang bang! A low and deep sonic boom exploded in the air like firecrackers. The fist imprint light pillar ruthlessly landed on the scales on the king-scaled demonic tiger's huge back. Under the huge impact, the king-scaled demonic tiger's huge body collapsed. Outside the cave below, 2 figures hurriedly rushed out. A purple-robed figure was like lightning as he directly charged into the dozens of people. Be careful, someone is coming out from the cave. Immediately, someone shouted out loudly. Although these dozens of people had not reached the spirit realm, they were all quite powerful. Bang bang bang, however, before the voice of the crowd could finish speaking, a low and deep sonic boom immediately resounded. Following which, one figure after another was directly sent flying by the huge force. It was impossible for them to resist, and the crowd instantly fell into chaos. In the air, the king-scaled demonic tiger's body staggered and fell over 10 meters. It quickly flapped its wings to stabilize its body. Who dares to launch a sneak attack? You're courting death. Just as the burly man was about to continue attacking the king-scaled demonic tiger, he suddenly noticed the change below. His expression immediately froze, and his figure immediately swooped down like lightning. Bang bang bang, low and deep muffled sounds continued to ring out. A purple-robed figure was covered in a faint golden light. Wherever it passed, it crushed everything and appeared in front of a tall young man at an extremely fast speed. Du Xiaofu, the well-built young man, was none other than the young sect leader of the White Tiger sect, He Jun. At this moment, he looked at the purple-robed figure in front of him, and his expression changed greatly. That's right, it's me. A low and deep voice that carried a hint of coldness, Du Xiaofu's fist directly smashed towards him. Your strength? It seems to have strengthened again. He Jun could feel that the aura on Du Xiaofu's body was even stronger than before. His expression changed greatly, and a fist imprint wrapped in profound qi, he used all his strength to resist. Bam! The 2 fist imprints collided, and a muffled sound suddenly rang out. A powerful storm of strength qi suddenly swept out, and the rocky ground cracked, and cracks spread out like a spider web. Qi La! He Jun's body flew backwards like a kite with a broken string, and then heavily fell onto a rock more than 10 meters away. He could not help but spit out blood from his mouth. How dare you hurt my son, you're courting death. A gloomy shout came from behind Du Xiaofu, and a burly figure pounced towards Du Xiaofu like lightning. Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with a terrifying sharpness, and his figure quickly arrived beside He Jun, who had fallen to the ground. His 5 fingers curled into claws, and immediately grabbed He Jun's throat, and said, "If you dare to take a step forward, He Jun is dead for sure." The burly figure quickly landed on the ground. He looked forward with a gloomy and ugly expression, but he really did not dare to make a move. Young sect master, numerous gazes fell on He Jun, and their expressions changed drastically. Then, numerous gazes fell on Du Xiaofu. Third brother. Du Yunlong also came to Du Xiaofu's side, and he was also carrying a burly Pulse Realm Nirvana Realm man. He said softly, "These are all experts from the White Tiger sect. The one in front is the White Tiger sect's sect master, He Li. He's a famous top expert in the entire Lanling Prefecture city." Du Xiaofu lifted He Jun up, and his 5 fingers were still on He Jun's throat. His gaze swept across the surrounding people, and finally landed on the burly man. Seeing that the burly man looked similar to He Jun, Du Xiaofu had already guessed the identity of this person. "Brat, who are you? Let go of my son, and we can talk." He Li looked at Du Xiaofu and Du Yunlong, and his expression was ugly. In the territory of the Lanling Prefecture city, no one had ever dared to threaten him like this. "My name is Du Xiaofu. Not long ago, I hit your son once. This is the second time." Du Xiaofu looked at He Li, and the aura emanating from his burly body made Du Xiaofu wary. This person's strength was very strong. Although he was not at the level of the Thunder Lion Beast and his drunkard father, he was definitely an expert. Chapter 146. He Li's face twitched when he heard that. He stared at Du Xiaofu and said, "Let go of my son and I'll pretend this never happened. You can leave. White Tiger sect and Dongxing Hall destroyed my Star Dragon gang and killed my disciples. Are you going to pretend this never happened?" Du Yunlong looked at He Li. If he had faced the White Tiger sect in the past, it would have been no different from a colossus in front of him. However, at this moment, with the inheritance of a powerful expert, he felt confident. In fact, it wouldn't be long before he no longer feared the White Tiger sect. "You're from Star Dragon Gang?" He Li gazed at Du Yunlong, and then he said, "People die every day in Lanling Prefecture. Powers vanish every day. The weak are prey to the strong. This is an unchanging law. Star Dragon Society's annihilation can only be blamed on their lack of strength. Can they blame anyone else? Qiu Shan from Dongxing Hall was killed by you too. What else do you want?" This, Du Yunlong was left speechless by He Li's question. For a moment, he was unable to reply. "That's right. The weak are prey to the strong. This is the law of the jungle." Du Xiaofu raised his head and smiled. His face, which still had a trace of childishness, was filled with an incongruous coldness. He looked at He Li and said, "I will let your son go, but not now. After I return to the Lanling residence, I will let your son go. Brat, I know you're from the Lanling Palace. Don't think that you can suppress my White Tiger sect just because you're from the Lanling Palace. Let my son go and I'll definitely let you go." He Li said, "But you have to let him go first." Du Xiaofu shook his head and stared at He Li. "I'm in charge now. It's not your turn to speak." Du Xiaofu said to the king-scaled demonic tiger in the air, "Little tiger, let's go." Roar. The king-scaled demon tiger understood. It flapped its wings and hovered in front of Du Xiaofu. It stared at He Li like a tiger eyeing its prey. As He Li's eyes twitched, Du Xiaofu carried the completely bound He Jun and Du Yunlong and jumped onto the king-scaled demon tiger. Survival of the fittest. Du Yunlong threw the captured Pulsation Realm and Nirvana Realm cultivator onto the ground. His eyes were filled with chilliness. Du Xiaofu, where are White Tiger sect's Elder Luo and Elder Lu? He Li's eyes twitched as he lifted his head to look at Du Xiaofu. "It's the law of the jungle. Of course, I killed him." Du Xiaofu smiled. He looked at the faint wound on one of the scales on the back of the king-scaled monster tiger, and his gaze gradually darkened. He said, "I will slowly settle the score with your White Tiger sect for injuring my king-scaled monster tiger." Roar. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the king-scaled demon tiger flapped its wings and flew away. Then, its huge tiger body gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. He Li's eyes twitched fiercely. Losing a Pulsation Realm Elder and a 3-star Peak Spirit Talisman Master was a huge blow to the entire White Tiger sect. "Sect Master, the young sect master has been captured by that brat. Should we chase after him? An old man asked Healy. It was unknown when he had summoned a few flying demonic beasts to fly over. Let's go to the cave and take a look. Healy gritted his teeth. Those two brats were able to stay in the cave for such a long time. There must be a secret in the cave. Perhaps, there really was a powerful expert's inheritance. Rumble. Just as everyone was walking towards the cave, the ground of the cave suddenly shook. The cracks on the stone walls rapidly spread. Then, a large part of the stone walls cracked. A large part of the mountain collapsed. Dust filled the air and gravel shot out. Large pieces of huge rocks rolled down. Retreat. Everyone hurriedly retreated. Their expressions changed drastically as they retreated far away. At this moment, the cave and the surrounding caves had all collapsed into piles of rocks. It was impossible to find the original cave. Everything had disappeared. How can this be? There must be a treasure in the cave. Healy floated in the air and looked at the collapsed cave. His face was filled with regret. If he had paid more attention and come personally from the beginning, the treasures in the cave would not have fallen into the hands of others. However, it was too late to regret now. Half an hour later, outside the Lanling Prefecture city, Du Xiaofu looked at He Jun in front of him and said, "We meet again?" "Because I'm unlucky." He Jun had a bitter smile on his face. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "I didn't expect to see you everywhere. If I knew that the Star Dragon gang was related to you, the White Tiger sect would not have participated in the matter between the Dongxing Hall and the Star Dragon gang." Du Xiaofu looked at He Jun and did not reply. Then, he said, "I said that I would let you go, so I will. I always keep my word." "Thank you," He Jun said softly. There was still a bitter smile on his face. There was blood at the corner of his mouth as he walked towards the Lanling Prefecture city. "Third brother, are we really going to let him go?" Du Yunlong frowned and said, "With the White Tiger sect's strength, I'm afraid that they will not let this matter go so easily. As long as we are in the Lanling Prefecture city, the White Tiger sect will not dare to do anything to us. They will be even more cautious." Du Xiaofu said. "I forgot about the Lanling Prefecture city." Du Yunlong understood. He thought about the Lanling Prefecture city behind his third brother. No matter how strong the White Tiger sect was, they would naturally be wary of the Lanling Prefecture city. They were not stronger than the Lanling Prefecture city. Du Xiaofu looked at Du Yunlong and asked, "Second brother, what do you plan to do now? The Star Dragon gang no longer exists. Why don't you come with me to the Lanling Prefecture city to settle down?" "Third brother, I still have to find the remaining brothers of the Star Dragon gang. Although the Star Dragon gang is no longer around, they are still around. I have to go and see them. Otherwise, I won't be at ease." Du Yunlong said. "All right then. I should be in the Lanling Prefecture city. Come and find me when the time comes." Du Xiaofu said. "All right." Du Yunlong nodded. Du Xiaofu also walked into the Lanling Prefecture city. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to go and see Murong Yorua and Dai Xingyu first. If he returned to the Lanling Prefecture city first, Aunt Shan would not let him out so easily. In the old mansion, when Murong Yorua and Dai Xingyu saw Du Xiaofu, both of them smiled. "Big brother Xiaofu." Dai Xingyu happily rushed in front of Du Xiaofu. She slightly raised her head and looked at Du Xiaofu. Her clear and pure eyes were filled with joy. She said, "It's been 11 days. Aunt and I have been worried to death about you. Aren't I back now?" Du Xiaofu stroked Dai Xingyu's soft, jet-black hair. Then, he looked at Murong Yorua, who was walking over with light steps. His gaze moved slightly. Her delicate body was like a jade willow, light and tender. Her long, jet-black hair naturally draped over her waist. She was still as beautiful as a fairy who had walked out of a painting. "Are you all right?" Murong Yorua asked. Her voice was clear and melodious like a silver bell. It's all settled. Du Xiaofu shook his head and smiled faintly. He looked at the woman in front of him. He didn't know why, but when he thought of the scene on the bed and the hazy zither sound in his hometown, he felt a strange feeling in his heart. Murong Yorua heard this and smiled faintly on her beautiful face. It was even more enchanting. She said, "It's good that you're fine. Your sister has come to find you several times these days. Now that you're fine, she should be relieved." "That tomboy is worried about me?" Du Xiaofu immediately expressed his doubts. He looked at Murong Yorua and said, "I'm afraid that my sister is using this as an excuse to find you. You're so mischievous." Murong Yorua glared at Du Xiaofu. She raised her white hand and tapped Du Xiaofu's eyebrows with her slender index finger. She said, "Your sister will like men in the future. It's just that no man in Lanling Prefecture City is worthy of her." Du Xiaofu could smell the faint fragrance coming from Murong Yorua's sleeves when she lifted her hand. He glanced at Murong Yorua and said, "But she likes women, and she likes a beautiful woman like you. Not to mention that no one would dare to want her as a tomboy. I'm afraid that no man would dare to approach a beautiful woman like you." Murong Yorua's expression changed. "You're already so glib-tongued at such a young age. Who knows how many girls will be hurt by your lies in the future?" Murong Yorua glared at Du Xiaofu, adding a bit of charm to her. She was already a stunning woman, but now she was even more charming. Ah! At this moment, Dai Xingyu's scream was heard. Du Xiaofu and Murong Yorua immediately turned around. Dai Xingyu rapidly retreated and immediately arrived beside Du Xiaofu. She looked at the shrunken king-scaled demon tiger in the courtyard and said, "Little circle circle, don't come over. I didn't bully you. Alright, little circle circle won't hurt you." Du Xiaofu smiled. It seemed that this girl wouldn't dare to hug the king-scaled demon tiger in her arms in the future. In the study of Lanling Prefecture City, Ouyang Ling stood tall and straight. His eyes were as clear as morning dew on his handsome face. He looked at a black-clothed middle-aged man in front of him and asked softly, "You came back after so long. Did something happen? If you didn't come back, I'm afraid that Sister Shan would really go out to look for you. There should be some benefits in the 1,000 caves. Most likely, that boy and his second brother got it, so we were delayed. When we came out, we happened to meet He Li," the black-clothed middle-aged man said. "Could it be that the legend of the 1,000 caves is true?" Ouyang Ling murmured softly. Then, his expression turned serious. He Li went. "I'm afraid it will be troublesome for that boy, right?" "It's a bit troublesome, but that boy is ruthless enough. He captured He Li's son and then came back openly. He should be with Murong Yorua now," the black-clothed middle-aged man said. "He is indeed ruthless. He Li must have been sullen enough." Ouyang Ling's face suddenly revealed a smile. His son was kidnapped. In addition, He Li should know that the boy has some relationship with you, so he was worried about you. In the end, he couldn't do anything, the black-clothed middle-aged man said. If He Li's strength can break through 1 or 2 more times, he can be considered pretty good. Unfortunately, he hasn't broken through to the peak of the pulse spirit realm, Ouyang Ling said. Chapter 147. Mansion Master, should we inform He Li? If that He Li bears a grudge, he might do something to that brat, the black-clothed middle-aged man said. There's no need. Unless it's a matter of life and death, we definitely cannot interfere. We also cannot let Sister Shan interfere. Ouyang Ling looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man. His eyes flickered as he said softly, "Compared to the people that brat will have to face in the future, He Li is probably not even an ant. If he can't even face a single He Li, then how will he face that colossus in the future? How will he be able to help his father?" The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes moved. After a while, he said to Ouyang Ling, Mansion Master, one of the commanders of the City Protection Army is still in the hands of our private army. There's also no movement from Han Chang's side. From the looks of it, that brat doesn't seem to want to participate in the matter of the City Protection Army. That brat has the same personality as his father. If it doesn't concern him, he won't interfere. It's fine as long as we don't provoke him, Ouyang Ling said. Then what should we do? Should we still let that brat interfere? The black-clothed middle-aged man asked. Of course. If that brat doesn't interfere, then how will I know whether that brat is stronger or that Han Xian is stronger? Ouyang Ling smiled faintly. His eyes that were like dew revealed a treacherous expression at this moment. He said, arrange for that brat to fight with Han Xian. Let's see who will win. Brother Ling, is there any news about Xiaofu? Just as Ouyang Ling's voice fell, Yuan Shanshan's figure rushed in anxiously. Mansion Master, Madam, I'll take my leave first. The black-clothed middle-aged man saw this and immediately smiled faintly before retreating. Brother Ling, is there any news about Xiaofu? I've been wanting to go look for him but you won't let me go. If something happens to Xiaofu, let's see how you'll explain it to Sister Ao Tong in the future. Yuan Shanshan angrily said to Ouyang Ling. She had wanted to go to the 1,000 Caves long ago but had been stopped. Now that so many days had passed, she could no longer sit still. You're always so impatient. Don't worry, that brat has returned safe and sound. He should be back in the mansion a little later. Ouyang Ling smiled faintly. That's good. Yuan Shanshan heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Xiaofu and said gently, when do you plan to see Xiaofu? Have you observed him enough? It should be soon. Ouyang Ling smiled. Du Xiaofu left Murong Yorua's place and returned to Lanling Prefecture City when the sun set and the silver-gray evening dew shrouded Lanling Prefecture City. Once they arrived at Lanling Prefecture City, Du Xiaofu was summoned to the rear courtyard by someone arranged by Yuan Shanshan. What seemed like a stern reprimand was filled with concern and love, causing warmth to blossom in Du Xiaofu's heart. He promised that he would properly stay in the prefecture in the following days. However, he could not avoid being interrogated about what he had been doing these past few days. Du Xiaofu didn't say much. He only said that he just happened to have a breakthrough and was in seclusion outside. Late at night, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged in his room. A faint golden light flickered in his eyes. His eyes were filled with shock and doubt. Boom! Behind Du Xiaofu, a faint golden rune light surged. An illusory image of the Five-Finger Mountain was entrenched behind him. The mysterious runes of the talisman flickered. The aura was incomparably turbulent, as if it could crush and destroy everything. Pulse Spirit. Could this be my Pulse Spirit? Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seal. The surprise and doubt in his eyes became even more intense. In the cultivation method of the golden-winged Great Peng, there was no such thing as a Pulse Spirit. However, he clearly had a Pulse Spirit in his body. At this moment, Du Xiaofu could clearly feel that the Pulse Spirit in his body seemed to have awakened. Some kind of will was awakening. It was just that his martial veins hadn't recovered much, so the feeling wasn't too strong. However, now that he had broken through to the pulsating realm, he could clearly feel that he could communicate with the martial veins in his body. After communicating with the martial veins, the Pulse Spirit condensed into the miraculous Five-Finger Mountain. Could it be that all of this is related to it? Du Xiaofu muttered softly. His expression changed. Immediately, he took out an item from his chest. It was an ancient bronze stone that he had picked up from the sand in the cave. The stone's shape was strange. It was like a five-finger mountain with 5 mountain peaks joined together. If one looked closely, one could see 5 different colors. However, if one stared at it closely, one's vision would be blurry. The more one looked, the more hazy and chaotic it became. Du Xiaofu sized up the 5-fingered stone in his hand. This stone was exactly the same as his Pulse Spirit. Looking at the five-fingered stone, Du Xiaofu also vaguely felt that there was a mystical connection with it. It was extremely mysterious and magical. However, after studying it carefully, the five-fingered stone didn't have any reaction. The only thing special about it was that it was especially hard. It felt indestructible and invincible. In the end, Du Xiaofu could only put the five-fingered stone back into his chest again. Then, he began to study the pulse spirit of the five-finger mountain. This pulse spirit was extremely magical and extraordinary. It could communicate with the energy of heaven and earth. In the cultivation method of the golden-winged rock, although there was no such thing as a pulse spirit after breaking through to the pulsating realm, after reaching the pulsating realm, it was gradually able to activate many of the golden-winged rock's beast abilities. Du Xiaofu also wanted to study it carefully. The next morning, Du Xiaofu stopped comprehending and went to eat breakfast with Aunt Shan. He also saw Yang Shuang again. She was still wearing a long green dress. Her indifferent eyes looked at Du Xiaofu without any ripples. However, Du Xiaofu was extremely enthusiastic. With her mother present, Yang Shuang could only helplessly smile at Du Xiaofu. On her beautiful face, her red lips were tender, and her smile could topple countries. Sister Shuang, you look really good when you smile. Du Xiaofu looked at Yang Shuang shamelessly and said, I don't know who will be so lucky in the future to be able to marry such a beautiful woman like Sister Shuang. You. Yang Shuang immediately glared at Du Xiaofu. Her cold temperament was undoubtedly telling Du Xiaofu to stay away. This guy clearly knew that she didn't like men, but he deliberately said this. Naturally, he was deliberately provoking her. She said hatefully, anyway, it won't be you, little brat. You won't be so lucky in this lifetime. As her voice fell, Yang Shuang seemed to feel that she had said something she shouldn't have said. She immediately turned her head and stopped talking. She didn't have the intention to pay attention to Du Xiaofu. Girl, that's not necessarily true. You're only 3 years older than Xiaofu. If you two can be together, it'll be great. Yuan Shanshan just happened to walk over and heard Yang Shuang's words. She immediately looked at Du Xiaofu and Yang Shuang. The more she looked at them, the more satisfied she was. Mother, what are you talking about? Yang Shuang angrily glared at her mother. How could she have a relationship with that brat? She didn't like men at all. She absolutely couldn't have a relationship with that shameless brat. Alright, let's eat breakfast. I'm just saying this. I don't know if Xiaofu is willing or not. I'm sorry to have wronged Xiaofu. Yuan Shanshan rudely interrupted Yang Shuang's words. The meaning in her eyes was that she felt that her daughter wasn't worthy of her sister's son. Yuan Shanshan, you're really my mother. Yang Shuang also rudely glared at Yuan Shanshan and directly called her by her name. She had often called her that since she was young. A mother knows her daughter best. Yuan Shanshan glanced at Yang Shuang and said, Xiaofu is a good child. Du Xiaofu didn't say anything else. He looked at the mother and daughter in front of him and felt a warm feeling in his heart. After breakfast, Du Xiaofu planned to return to his room to continue studying the pulse spirit in his body. However, Huang San, who he hadn't seen for more than 10 days, hurriedly ran over and said that there was a person called Du Yunlong outside the mansion looking for him. He had already been arranged to stay in the side hall of the mansion. When Du Xiaofu arrived at the side hall, his second brother, Du Yunlong, was waiting there. He had also changed his clothes and looked even more extraordinary. I didn't expect third uncle to have such a close relationship with the mansion master of the Lanling mansion. I also accidentally heard first uncle and my father mention that third uncle was a peerless figure in the outside world. He is the person who has the greatest chance of reviving the Du family in the history of our Du family. However, Du Yunlong looked around the side hall. When he saw Du Xiaofu arrive, he lightly sighed. He thought that third uncle was still the drunkard third uncle of the Du family. Then, he smiled and said to Du Xiaofu, in the future, reviving the Du family will depend on third brother. Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. Then, his expression became serious and he asked Du Yunlong, second brother, why are you here? Did the remaining people of the Star Dragon gang encounter some trouble? That's not it. Du Yunlong shook his head and said to Du Xiaofu, actually, I came today because I have something important to discuss with third brother. What is it? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's expression immediately became serious. Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu for a moment and said, the Star Dragon gang no longer exists, but there are still many disciples. There is also the territory and businesses that the Star Dragon gang has painstakingly fought for in the past 2 years. There is also the territory and businesses left behind by the Dongxing Hall. Therefore, I thought about it for an entire night and I have decided to take over the Star Dragon gang. Then, congratulations second brother. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. If he could revive the Star Dragon gang, then it would be much bigger than the current Du family. However, it won't be easy to take over the Star Dragon gang. There are many forces in the Lanling Prefecture, such as the Dongxing Hall and the Star Dragon gang. These forces are currently eyeing the territories of the Dongxing Hall and the Star Dragon gang. Not to mention forces like the White Tiger sect, there are also many other forces. With my strength and the remaining disciples of the Star Dragon gang, I'm afraid that we won't be able to compete. Especially the White Tiger sect, I'm afraid that they won't give up so easily. Du Yunlong said to Du Xiaofu with a serious expression. Chapter 148. Du Xiaofu said nothing, his eyes narrowed as he listened to his second brother, Du Yunlong. Du Xiaofu naturally understood that even if his second brother's strength had improved a lot, even if he did not fear the other factions, he was still unable to compete with the White Tiger sect. The matter of the 1,000 caves had most likely already created a deep grudge with the White Tiger sect. The White Tiger sect's Healy would naturally not let the matter rest so easily. The White Tiger sect did not dare to deal with the Lanling Prefecture, but they would not take the Star Dragon gang seriously. Second brother, what do you plan to do? Du Xiaofu asked Du Yunlong after narrowing his eyes in thought for a while. Du Yunlong lifted his gaze to look at Du Xiaofu and replied, I've thought about it for a long time. I've decided to take over the Star Dragon gang's territory and people. However, the Star Dragon gang no longer exists, so I plan to establish a new faction. I'll be the deputy, and you, third brother, will be the leader. I think that if you join us, the White Tiger sect will not dare to act rashly. Du Xiaofu was stunned. That's right. Du Yunlong smiled and said, only you can control the situation now. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't even be able to clean up the mess of the Star Dragon gang, let alone compete with the other factions. Second brother, I won't be staying in the Lanling Prefecture city for long. I'm afraid I'll have to leave soon. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. He would not be staying in the Lanling Prefecture city for long. If the prefecture lord had not come out of seclusion in the next few days, he could only take his leave first. It would be fine as long as the matter in the Drifting Cloud County was resolved. It's fine. You don't have to stay in the Lanling Prefecture city all the time even if you join us. You just have to let others know that you're here, especially the White Tiger sect. When the time comes, you can go anywhere you want, Du Yunlong said. I really haven't thought about this. Give me some time to think about it, Du Xiaofu said to Du Yunlong. There's no time. You have to make a decision as soon as possible. Otherwise, let alone Dongxing Hall's territory, even Star Dragon gang's territory will be taken over by other forces. Du Yunlong looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, I also discussed with the remaining Star Dragon gang members last night. Although there were a few who didn't agree with changing the sign, most of them agreed. Actually, I didn't want to change the Star Dragon Guild's name. After all, I was one of the founding members of the Star Dragon Guild. It's a pity that it doesn't exist anymore. Now that we've been reborn, the Star Dragon gang isn't completely gone. It's changed now. The only thing you can think of is what we should call this new force. You want me to name it? Du Xiaofu looked at Du Yunlong and asked. You're the leader and I'm the vice leader. Naturally, you can name it. Du Yunlong nodded and then said to Du Xiaofu, maybe you don't care too much about these things. Stone City is too small. Our Du family wants to leave Stone City. In the future, this will be the second Du family, an even stronger Du family. It will be a second place for our Du family members to stay. This place will be built by us brothers. Phew. An even stronger Du family, building a second Du family. Du Xiaofu took a deep breath as his heartstrings were tugged. A bright light flashed in his eyes. If there was an even more powerful Du clan, how could he and his drunkard father be separated by others? When one's blood is boiling, waves will rise in the vast ocean, sweeping away all evil in the world. A gentleman's heart will be filled with hatred. World Assembly, let's call it World Assembly. Du Xiaofu said to Du Yunlong. World Assembly. Du Yunlong murmured. Then, he revealed a smile and said, good name. In the future, it will be called World Assembly. I'll go back and prepare for the World Assembly. When the time comes, I'll invite third brother. No. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Du Yunlong, I don't want to show myself for the time being. However, if you want to do anything in the next few days, bring along Little Tiger. With Little Tiger around, I think it will be enough. Yes, with Little Tiger around, even if we face the White Tiger sect, we won't be afraid. Du Yunlong excitedly said. The two brothers chatted for another hour before Du Yunlong left the Lanling prefecture. Du Xiaofu called the king-scaled demon tiger and told it to stay by his second brother's side. The king-scaled demon tiger nodded and followed Du Yunlong out of the Lanling prefecture. The second Du family. I'll build an even stronger Du family. In the side hall, Du Xiaofu murmured, Mother, sister, I'll go find you with father as soon as possible. I definitely will. Du Xiaofu, come out. At this moment, a shout came from outside the hall. Before the voice even faded away, Ouyang Shuang rushed into the side hall. When he heard the shout, Du Xiaofu knew that Ouyang Shuang had come. Looking at the angry Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaofu asked in confusion, I didn't offend you, right? Why are you so angry? I went to Yorua's place just now. If I had been a little later, I'm afraid the consequences would have been unimaginable. Ouyang Shuang said angrily. Miss Yorua, what happened? Du Xiaofu's face sank when he heard this. Ouyang Shuang said, when I went over, there were people who were planning to make things difficult for Yorua and Xingyu. Fortunately, I arrived in time. After questioning them, I found out that they were from the city guards. Because of the grudge between you and the city guards, they captured the commander of the city guards. They found out that you have a close relationship with Yorua, so they plan to take action against Yorua and Xingyu. How are Miss Yorua and Xingyu? Where are they now? Du Xiaofu asked in a deep voice. His face was ashen. Ouyang Shuang looked at the expression on Du Xiaofu's face, and her bright eyes rippled a little. Her voice became gentler as she said, they are naturally fine now. I had originally planned to arrange for them to stay in the residence, but Yorua insisted. I had no choice, so I came to inform you. Du Xiaofu's eyes darkened. After thinking for a while, he looked up at Ouyang Shuang and asked, have you investigated? Are those people really from the city guards? Ouyang Shuang said, I've asked them. They should be from the city guards. What about those people now? Du Xiaofu asked. Ouyang Shuang was stunned and said, they promised that they would never get close to Yorua and Xingyu again. They are also from the city guards. Because the relationship between the city guards and our Lanling mansion is very delicate, I let them go. Delicate relationship? You let them go. Du Xiaofu sighed helplessly. Then, he turned and left the side hall. I'll go out first. Where are you going? Are you going to look for the city guards? Ouyang Shuang looked at Du Xiaofu's back and asked. Du Xiaofu didn't turn back. His voice rang out, I have my own arrangements. Du Xiaofu left the side hall. First, he found Huang San. Then, he asked Huang San to bring him to the Lanling Mansion's private army camp and found Zhang Lin. It was naturally extremely difficult for ordinary people to find the Lanling Mansion's private army camp. However, with Du Xiaofu's status in the Lanling Mansion, it was naturally not difficult. Young Master Xiaofu, why are you here? Zhang Lin was very puzzled when he saw Du Xiaofu. Commander Zhang, is the city guard surnamed Lin still in your hands? Du Xiaofu asked. Zhang Lin's expression was slightly awkward as he said, Young Master Xiaofu, that surnamed Lin is still in our hands. To be honest, we don't know what to do with him now. We have also interrogated him. That guy probably doesn't have any intention of rebelling, nor does he have the guts. Therefore, we have been detaining him in the camp for young Master Xiaofu to deal with. It's fine as long as he's in your hands. Du Xiaofu nodded and said to Zhang Lin, Commander Zhang, I would like to ask for your help. Young Master Xiaofu, you're too polite. Just tell me. Zhang Lin immediately nodded. Don't be so sure. If you help me, you might get into trouble and lose your position. Du Xiaofu looked at Zhang Lin seriously and said, however, it might also bring you a lot of benefits. Zhang Lin looked at Du Xiaofu. He knew that this Xiaofu was definitely not an idiot. After a while, he nodded and said, since young Master Xiaofu has said it so clearly, then you don't have any intention of harming me. Therefore, if there's anything, please tell me. Before helping me, I want to understand the relationship between the city guards and the private army of the Lanling Mansion. I also want to know the relationship between the Lanling Mansion's governor and the Lanling Mansion's governor. Du Xiaofu said. When Zhang Lin heard this, he was stunned. His eyes moved slightly as if he was thinking about something. Then, he nodded at Du Xiaofu and said, Young Master Xiaofu, what do you want to ask? As long as I know, I will tell you everything. Thank you. Du Xiaofu nodded and said to Huang San, do me a favor too. After this is done, I guarantee that you will be promoted in the mansion. Thank you, young Master Xiaofu, for your help. When Huang San heard this, he immediately became emotional and grateful. He patted his chest and promised, Young Master Xiaofu, just tell me what you want. I, Huang San, will definitely do it. Du Xiaofu smiled and said, it's not that serious. Just help me call Han Xian over. Tell him that it has something to do with the city guards. Tell him to find me in the mansion. In the Lanling Mansion, a black-clothed middle-aged man came to Ouyang Ling and said with a smile, Mansion Master, we have already arranged it. However, there was a small change. The young lady was there, but the result was the same. That kid has started to make his move. Oh. Ouyang Ling was very interested and said, they are going to fight. I want to know, what will that kid do? I don't know yet. The black-clothed middle-aged man smiled bitterly and said, but that kid went to the private army camp and sent someone to find Han Xian. When the sun set and the silvery gray dew shrouded the sky above Lanling Prefecture City, it was already dusk. The sunset glow spread in all directions and covered half of the sky. Each layer was fainter than the previous one, until the entire sky was grayish-white. In the Lanling Mansion, in a side hall, a man emitting a cold aura looked at Du Xiaofu and frowned slightly. He said, You are looking for me. Chapter 149. I'm not the one looking for you. I heard that you were looking for me that day. Coincidentally, I had something to do so I went out and only came back yesterday. So I wanted to ask why you were looking for me that day. A slight smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. When the indifferent young man heard this, his face immediately twitched. He raised his head slightly and his long black hair swayed slightly. His thin and long phoenix eyes stared at Du Xiaofu with a rather arrogant gaze. He was Han Xian of the Lanling Four Young Masters. Han Xian naturally wouldn't listen to Du Xiaofu's words. It was clearly this fellow who came looking for him, but now he was denying it. Looking at Du Xiaofu for a moment, his thin lips parted in pride as he said, "Let's not beat around the bush. Let's end the matter of the city guards. You should know that Lin Ming is only here to avenge his son, but he didn't expect you to be someone from the Lanling Palace. He can't afford to offend you at all. Now that he has been locked up by you for so long, the father and son have suffered so much. You should have vented your anger. How about letting Lin Ming go, since you don't dare to kill him?" Lin Ming. Du Xiaofu pretended to be puzzled. He looked at Han Xian and said, "I remember now. Lin Ming was arrested by the Lanling Palace's private army because he was suspected of rebelling. It has nothing to do with me. Du Xiaofu, if you continue to act like this, then there is no need for us to continue this discussion. Perhaps you have already sensed that keeping Lin Ming in your hands is a problem. If you do not wish to continue this discussion, then I will take my leave. If you have the ability, then kill Lin Ming." Han Xian's face darkened. His originally indifferent face became even more indifferent at this moment. "This has nothing to do with me, but I have something to tell you. I just found out about it." Du Xiaofu looked at Han Xian with a faint smile. He paused for a moment and then said, "I just found out that Lin Ming finally couldn't hold on in the Lanling Palace's private army camp. So he confessed everything." "What did he say?" Han Xian's expression changed slightly. Du Xiaofu smiled and said, "Actually, Lin Ming didn't say much. He just said that you and your father plan to deal with the city lord with the city guards. He said that you plan to take action next month and that you were all prepared." "Bullshit, that's impossible. You must have been beaten into a confession by Lin Ming. My father and I didn't have that intention at all." Han Xian was furious when he heard this. This was definitely a confession by torture. "Ha ha ha." Suddenly, Han Xian laughed heartily. His furious face returned to normal in a short period of time. He looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. "Du Xiaofu, you're just trying to provoke me and get information out of me, right? Your methods are far too immature and unpresentable." Du Xiaofu still had a smile on his face. "Indeed, you are very smart. As expected of the leader of the Lanling Four Young Masters. However, it's about time now." "What do you mean it's about time?" Han Xian frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. "Young Master Xiaofu, it's bad. Something bad has happened." Just as Han Xian finished speaking, a hurried voice sounded from outside the side hall. Huang San, Zhang Lin and a few others ran into the side hall in a panic. They said to Du Xiaofu, "Young Master Xiaofu, the city guards have really rebelled. There are no less than 10,000 of them in armor. They have already surrounded the Lanling Palace." "What?" Han Xian's expression changed greatly when he heard this. He had specifically informed all the officers of the city guard not to act rashly, so it should be impossible for something like this to happen. He immediately said in surprise, "That's impossible, that's absolutely impossible. Han Xian, it looks like you and your father really planned to deal with the palace lord?" Du Xiaofu looked at Han Xian in surprise. "That's impossible. I'll go take a look." Han Xian's expression was solemn. If the city guards were to surround Lanling Manor so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through, then this matter would be a huge problem. "Young Master Han, please wait." Du Xiaofu immediately stood in front of Han Xian and said, "There's no need to rush this. I'm sure the Lanling Palace's private army will deal with this quickly. We'll know once we capture the leaders and interrogate them. I'll go take a look." Han Xian became even more anxious after hearing Du Xiaofu's words. If the city guards were captured, the situation would be even worse. He really couldn't understand why the situation would suddenly become like this. Logically speaking, the city guards shouldn't be like this. "Young Master Han, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Are you feeling guilty?" Du Xiaofu had no intention of letting Han Xian leave. He immediately stood in front of Han Xian again. Du Xiaofu, what do you mean by this? Han Xian looked at Du Xiaofu with a gloomy expression. It looks like you need to stay in the Lanling Palace. Du Xiaofu smiled slightly, then turned to Zhang Lin and said, Commander Zhang, you keep an eye on young Master Han. I'll go inform the palace lord that Han Xian and his son and the city guards are plotting something. I'll tell the palace lord to capture Han Chang first. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu was about to leave. Du Xiaofu, you're framing me. Wait. Han Xian's expression changed greatly. He immediately grabbed Du Xiaofu's shoulder and pulled Du Xiaofu back. No, I have to inform the palace lord. Let go. With his shoulder pulled, Du Xiaofu immediately turned around and shouted. A palm print wrapped in a faint golden light of Xian energy slammed toward Han Xian. An astonishing gale swept out, and a trace of a smile flashed across his eyes. Han Xian's expression changed. In a panic, he immediately let go of Du Xiaofu's shoulder. At the same time, he used his left hand to block the attack. Bang! A low and deep muffled sound was immediately emitted. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's body was directly blown away by a wild and ferocious wind. He violently smashed against the wall of the side hall, causing the wall to crack open. Impossible, how could this be? At this moment, Han Xian's expression changed drastically. He felt that Du Xiaofu's palm strike had suddenly retracted, and then he was sent flying. It was obvious that Du Xiaofu had deliberately injured him. How dare you, Han Xian, injure young Master Xiaofu so severely? Almost at the speed of lightning, Zhang Lin's figure appeared behind Han Xian. He grabbed Han Xian's shoulder with one hand, and his Xian energy surged and restrained Han Xian, who was still in a daze. Tie him up. The several people behind Zhang Lin seemed to be prepared. They took out cold iron chains and tied Han Xian up tightly with lightning speed. I understand now. This is a trap. Du Xiaofu, you tricked me. Han Xian did not struggle. He looked at Du Xiaofu, who was slowly getting up from the ground, and a bitter smile appeared on his indifferent face. He said, I didn't expect to fall for such a low-level trap. You didn't fall for it. There are indeed many city guards surrounding the Lanling Palace. Du Xiaofu slowly walked in front of Han Xian. There was some blood at the corner of his mouth, but there was a smile on his face. He said to Zhang Lin, Commander Zhang, you saw it with your own eyes. Now you know what to do, right? Young Master Xiaofu led the city guards to surround the Lanling Palace. He even wanted to kidnap young Master Xiaofu. Because young Master Xiaofu resisted, he ended up injuring young Master Xiaofu. If I didn't save him, I'm afraid that Xiaofu would have been dead. It seems that young Master Han and his son really want to rebel, Zhang Lin said. Alright, I'll leave that person to you. I'm seriously injured, so I'll go treat my injuries first. Du Xiaofu smiled with satisfaction, turned around, and left the side hall. At dusk, there was a soft, transparent, and moist air floating in the sky. In the sky above the Lanling Palace city, the setting sun rolled in the golden-red clouds before gradually sinking behind the dark horizon. At dusk, the entire Lanling Prefecture city was shaken. Everyone watched as tens of thousands of armored soldiers stepped out from the city guards and surrounded the Lanling Prefecture. Not long after, the crowd saw that the Lanling Palace's private army outside the Lanling Palace seemed to have been prepared. The mighty army pounced out at the same time and directly surrounded the city guards. In the end, the experts in the Lanling Palace's private army said something and the Lanling Palace's private army defeated the city guards without a fight. The tens of thousands of city guards were captured and taken away. All of this happened in the short span of dusk. Then, the Lanling Palace once again regained its peace. Everything was calm, as though nothing had happened. Not a single trace was left behind. In the sky, the golden edges of the setting sun flickered and gradually dimmed. Far away from the Lanling Palace city, light blue lines began to appear on the mountain range's outline. The sky slowly turned dark. Throughout the night, the people in the Lanling Palace city were in a state of panic. The confrontation between the city guards and the Lanling Palace's private army had spread like wildfire. The more unclear the situation was, the more fearful it was. Various large, medium, and small forces, as well as the civilians, were all guessing what would happen in the Lanling Palace city. Not long after nightfall, someone saw the city lord Han Chang, who rarely appeared in the city lord mansion, leaving the mansion in a hurry with a few trusted aides. Finally, they entered the Lanling Palace and left the Lanling Palace after a long while. At the same time, the city lord Han Xian was with them. In the wee hours of the morning, many people in the Lanling Palace city saw the tens of thousands of city guards who were captured by the Lanling Palace's private army at dusk yesterday. They returned in an orderly manner as though nothing had happened. In short, the night seemed calm, but for many people, there were turbulent undercurrents. On this night, Du Xiaofu was extremely relaxed. He had already returned to his room and began to study his unique pulse spirit. The more he studied, the more shocked Du Xiaofu was about his unique pulse spirit. Chapter 150. Du Xiaofu felt that in the strange five-finger mountain phantom martial vein, it seemed to contain all 5 attributes. This was definitely unusual. There were 5 attributes in heaven and earth. All living creatures in heaven and earth would have 5 attributes in their bodies. However, among the 5 attributes of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, some people leaned towards the metal attribute and some leaned towards the fire attribute. It was the same for monstrous beasts. They leaned towards different attributes, so their beast energy and attack methods were also different. Overall, the 5 attributes each had their own merits, so no one would pay too much attention to attributes. However, attributes were related to the cultivation of martial skills and the comprehension of various profound meanings. Generally speaking, martial skills were also divided into attributes. For example, warriors who lean towards the fire attribute would naturally have a much easier time cultivating martial skills of the fire attribute and comprehending the mystic bones of the fire attribute monstrous beasts. However, if one tried to forcefully comprehend other familiar martial skills and the mystic bones of the monstrous beasts, even if there were some gains, it would still take time and would not be able to achieve great success. It was the same for martial veins. When warriors chose the vein spirit, they had to divide the attributes before looking for the blood essence of the stronger monstrous beasts to open the martial veins and condense the vein spirit. For example, warriors who lean towards the fire attribute would naturally look for the blood essence of the fire attribute monstrous beasts to open the martial veins and condense the vein spirit. If they used the blood essence of other attributes, it was not impossible to succeed, but the effect would be greatly reduced. At the same time, it would also be a huge hindrance to their future cultivation. It might even be difficult for them to improve their cultivation. But now, Du Xiaofu realized that the meridian soul he had condensed had all 5 attributes. He himself was a talisman master and a talisman master who was proficient in all 5 attributes. At this time, with the addition of the 5-finger mountain phantom martial vein spirit which had all 5 attributes, it meant that he should be able to cultivate martial skills of any attribute and comprehend any monstrous beast's mystic bones in the future. The effect would not be much different. What is the origin of that stone? Du Xiaofu was once again puzzled and shocked by the 5-finger mountain stone. That stone was definitely extraordinary. He did not know how it had appeared in the cave and whether it was something left behind by the fallen expert. In the early morning, a soft mist rose between heaven and earth. The mountain peaks were painted with a layer of soft milky white. The white mist rendered everything hazy and illusory. Phew! Du Xiaofu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air from his abdomen. He withdrew his hand seal and stopped cultivating. After the faint golden light of profound energy around his body was withdrawn into his body, he opened his eyes. The faint golden light immediately hid in his deep and sharp eyes. Who is it? Suddenly, Du Xiaofu seemed to have sensed something. With a soft shout from his mouth, his figure immediately leapt up from the bed and hurriedly pushed open the door, only to see a figure hastily leaping forward. "Where do you think you're going?" Du Xiaofu immediately shouted. Since this person had fled, it meant that he was definitely not from the Lanling prefecture, or perhaps he was not a good person. The Xian qi around him surged, and he immediately gave chase. However, the people in front seemed to have sensed that Du Xiaofu was chasing after them. They immediately picked up the path and rushed forward, increasing their speed. There must be something wrong. Du Xiaofu's mouth twitched when he saw the figure in front of him hastily fleeing. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the figure that was gradually increasing the distance between them. His brows furrowed, and a faint golden xian qi quickly covered his body. The xian qi under his feet surged, and his feet suddenly stomped on the ground. His speed instantly increased, and his figure violently rushed forward. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's speed was more than twice as fast as before. He quickly chased after the fleeing figure in front of him, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. The figure in front seemed to be very familiar with the terrain of the Lanling prefecture. After several turns, they arrived at an empty plaza. The distance between them was getting closer and closer, and it was only a few meters away. Du Xiaofu could already clearly see the figure in front of him. The figure was tall and straight, and the figure was slender. "Where do you think you're going?" Du Xiaofu shouted. When his feet touched the ground, an even more ferocious xian qi surged from the soles of his feet. His figure pounced forward, and his right hand clenched into a fist and punched forward. An invisible energy wave swept out like a wave, and the space rang out 13 times in a row. Humph! The figure in front clearly sensed Du Xiaofu's attack from behind. Immediately, he snorted coldly and suddenly turned around. A fist was also thrown out. The seemingly calm fist was instantly accompanied by a wild wind that swept out. Finally, it collided with Du Xiaofu's fist. Bang! The two fists collided, and a ferocious wind swept out, directly sweeping away the dust in the plaza. Dang dang! Du Xiaofu immediately staggered back. With every step he took back, the ground of the plaza directly cracked. The opponent's strength was extremely powerful. "You're really something. Let's continue." The figure that turned around, and as his voice faded, he once again appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. His speed was so fast that Du Xiaofu could not clearly see his appearance. Then, a palm print appeared in front of Du Xiaofu again. The palm print was as fast as lightning, and a terrifying wind fluctuated. The wind did not seem to leak at all, and it enveloped Du Xiaofu like a circle. Feeling the terrifying wind, Du Xiaofu's face became serious. The opponent's strength was unfathomable. He was too strong, but his speed was too fast. Du Xiaofu had no choice. His hand seals changed, and a pale golden light surged around him. There were faint talisman engravings on his skin. In an instant, his hand violently slapped out to meet the attack. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu shouted. He opened his palm like a cattail leaf fan. Wherever his hand passed, pale golden talisman engravings would flash and condense, forming an arc-shaped golden space dent around his palm. The space around his palm was densely packed with layers of golden talisman engravings, like the golden wings of a golden-winged rock. A domineering and ferocious aura suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's body and swept out, shaking the space. Then, his hand violently slapped on the opponent's palm print. This attack was one of the golden-winged rock's techniques. When he was in the innate realm, Du Xiaofu could not use it. He could only use it after reaching the pulsating realm. In addition, there were several other techniques that could only be used after reaching the pulsating realm. But last night, Du Xiaofu had only studied and comprehended the sky-shaking wings for a short while. Bang! A low muffled sound was heard again. In the terrifying wind, the golden talisman engravings around Du Xiaofu's hand were in a deadlock with the former's palm print for a while. Then, they were immediately shattered by a sudden surge of power from the opponent's palm. Dang dang! Du Xiaofu's body was once again blasted back by a vigorous force. After more than 10 steps, he was finally able to disperse the terrifying force. Wherever his feet passed, the ground was turned into dust. This person is so strong. Du Xiaofu raised his head and finally saw the opponent's appearance clearly. It was an extremely handsome middle-aged man. His face was handsome, and his eyes were as clear as morning dew. His aura was faintly discernible and spreading from his body. At this moment, Du Xiaofu felt as if he was facing the Thunder Lion and the two middle-aged men, one in white and one in black, in the Stone City. What kind of martial technique is this? It's so overbearing and fierce. The middle-aged handsome man murmured in surprise. At this moment, his eyes fell on Du Xiaofu in surprise. Then, he looked at Du Xiaofu and raised his rebellious eyebrows slightly. He said, "Boy, attack me with your strongest strength. Let me see what Du Tingshuan's son is like. Let me see if he will lose face for him." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He looked at the handsome middle-aged man and then closed his eyes slightly. Then, he condensed his hand seals and qi surged around his body. It seemed as if there were talisman engravings all over his body. Suddenly, his aura was extremely overbearing. Eh! Seeing this, the middle-aged man's eyes surged with doubt again. Then, as if he felt something, surprise surged in his eyes. In a short moment, as the hand seal was condensed, an overbearing aura fluctuated. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly opened, and a lightning-like light flashed in his clear eyes. His purple robe fluttered in an instant, and with his body as the center, cracks kept spreading from his feet. A loud shout came out of his mouth immediately, "Ao!" The shout was like a dragon roaring in the 9 heavens, like a divine elephant trumpeting. At this moment, the surrounding square rumbled and the space trembled violently. The imposing aura was unparalleled, and the pressure was unparalleled. Boom! In the midst of the overbearing and surging aura, the talisman engravings around Du Xiaofu's body emitted fluctuations. His hands transformed into countless palm seals at lightning speed. In the end, they condensed into a single palm seal, which carried the sound of wind and thunder like the sound of Sanskrit. With a stomp of his foot, his figure pounced toward the handsome middle-aged man. The palm seal instantly appeared in front of him. The handsome middle-aged man's eyes trembled. He waved his hand and shook his long sleeve. Immediately, a palm seal met Du Xiaofu's palm and heavily collided with each other. Suddenly, the two palms collided, and a thunderous explosion resounded in the space. Turbulent energy ripples spread out, and the entire surrounding space trembled rapidly. Rumble! The space trembled, and a terrifying energy storm swept out like a hurricane. The fluctuations spread far away, and finally gradually disappeared in the distant space. Dang dang! Du Xiaofu's footsteps staggered. This time, he only took 3 steps back. However, with each step, his feet trembled. When he stabilized his body with the last step, his face was pale. Initial pulse realm. Is he really only at the initial pulse realm? And this defensive power, he's like a demonic beast king. Unbelievable. The handsome middle-aged man's body did not move, but at this moment, his expression was incomparably shocked. The surprise in his eyes was uncertain, as if he had encountered the most inconceivable thing. This kid's cultivation level was only at the initial pulse realm, but the strength he had just displayed was definitely comparable to someone at the initial pulse realm. Moreover, that defensive power also caused him to gasp in amazement. He naturally knew how much strength he had used in his attacks, so he also knew how terrifying this kid's defensive power was. If it was someone at the same cultivation level as Yi Shiwen, who had withstood several of his attacks, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Chapter 151. Du Xiaofu's pale white face fluctuated as he looked at the tall and handsome middle-aged man in front of him. Then, he respectfully bowed and said, Du Xiaofu greets Uncle Ling. The handsome middle-aged man was naturally Ouyang Ling. Hearing that, he looked at Du Xiaofu and a smile rose from the corner of his mouth. He said, Boy, how did you recognize me? Du Xiaofu's eyes jumped and said, Very simple. Big sis Shuang looks a bit like you. I could tell with a glance, so it wasn't hard to recognize you. Hearing that, Ouyang Ling's face couldn't help being taken aback. Then, he bitterly smiled and said, Don't mention that girl. I don't know what sins I committed in my past life for her to anger me. Sooner or later, I will be angered to death by her. Big sis Shuang's martial cultivation talent is extremely high, and her appearance is also devastatingly beautiful. Uncle Ling, you should be happy. Du Xiaofu didn't know what to say. In his heart, he thought that if he said more nice things and praised more, then there shouldn't be anything wrong. Don't you know that girl is not interested in men right now? She actually likes women. Your Aunt Shan and I have been having headaches for a long time. Ouyang Ling looked at Du Xiaofu, then his clear gaze suddenly changed, as if he discovered a new continent. He said, Boy, you're not bad. You're also my brother's son, and you're also very special. How about I betroth that girl to you? What? After hearing that, Du Xiaofu was instantly taken aback. If Ouyang Shuang knew about this, she would probably be the first to commit suicide. He quickly shook his head and said, Uncle Ling, don't joke around. I'm still young, so this kind of thing needs to be decided by my parents. That's true. Next time I see my brother, I'll mention it to him. Ouyang Ling seemed to be serious. Then, he looked at Du Xiaofu. His gaze slightly moved as he said, You look like your father as well. You can recognize him with a glance. Speaking of which, it's already been 18 years since I last saw him. How has he been these years? He's all right. He just likes to drink. I wonder if he used to like drinking. Du Xiaofu said softly. Needless to say, Du Xiaofu could feel that the relationship between this handsome middle-aged man and his alcoholic father was definitely not ordinary. He didn't drink much in the past. Ouyang Ling looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed. You'll slowly find out about your father's past in the future. However, it won't be easy for you to surpass your father. I'll work hard, as long as I don't embarrass him, Du Xiaofu said. You have ambition. Ouyang Ling slowly stepped forward. His clear eyes looked at Du Xiaofu. His expression became more serious. His eyes flickered as he said, I came out of seclusion last night. Uncle Ling shouldn't be in seclusion. Du Xiaofu interrupted Ouyang Ling's words. Then, he smiled and said, If I'm not wrong, the governor of Lanling Prefecture City, Han Chang, must have come to find Uncle Ling last night. Han Xian should also have been released last night. At this time, I'm afraid that the city guards captured by the Lanling Prefecture City's private army have also returned. Looking at Du Xiaofu, Ouyang Ling's face twitched helplessly. After a while, he looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, Tell me, how can you be so sure? Du Xiaofu smiled and said, I didn't know at the beginning. However, I suspected it yesterday and confirmed it in the end. After pausing for a moment, Du Xiaofu continued, Normally, during this special period, the city guards wouldn't dare to touch my friend. Han Xian wouldn't either. He would even warn the city guards not to cause trouble during this period. Therefore, when I heard that the city guards wanted to harm my friend, I already suspected it, but I didn't dare to be sure. In the end, I went to the private army camp and found out that Uncle Ling came to Lanling Prefecture City 16 years ago and became the governor. Before this, the current governor of Lanling Prefecture City, Han Chang, had been in Lanling Prefecture City for many years and had made many contributions. He originally had the greatest chance of becoming the governor. This Han Chang also has a lot of background in the empire. However, Uncle Ling became the governor immediately. Han Chang was more or less displeased. All these years, he probably didn't agree with Uncle Ling either. What does this mean? Ouyang Ling looked at Du Xiaofu and asked with interest. Du Xiaofu smiled and said, "Of course it has something to do with it." Han Chang didn't agree with Uncle Ling either. I think Uncle Ling, as the governor of Lanling Prefecture City, also felt a little uncomfortable. However, this Han Chang is also very smart. Therefore, Uncle Ling didn't want to do anything to him all these years. Secondly, he didn't catch Han Chang's tail. However, this time, I unintentionally caused some trouble. It just so happened that it involved Han Chang's most important and most trusted city guards. Uncle Ling wanted to take this opportunity to knock some sense into Han Chang, but it wasn't good for you to do it personally. Moreover, this time, Han Chang didn't show up at all. It was his son, Han Xian, who stepped in. Therefore, Uncle Ling chose me and the situation developed to this point. After Du Xiaofu finished speaking in one breath, his gaze fell on Ouyang Ling again. When Ouyang Ling heard Du Xiaofu's words, he stood with his hands behind his back and smiled. "What you said makes some sense. However, these words are a little far-fetched. I can completely deny it. It's a little far-fetched, and there's no evidence." Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Ling and said, "But this is indeed the truth of the matter. This result is also what Uncle Ling wanted. I think Han Chang came to Lanling Prefecture City last night to see Uncle Ling, so he must have expressed his stance to Uncle Ling. I'm afraid that he won't be dissatisfied in the future." Therefore, Uncle Ling released the city guards and Han Xian, and said that this was a conflict between Han Xian and me, right? Ouyang Ling's handsome face muscles looked at Du Xiaofu and couldn't help but twitch. He was surprised that this kid could actually guess the development of the matter after Han Chang came last night. After a while, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "I just want to know, how can you be so sure?" He. Du Xiaofu smiled and then said, "It's very simple. Yesterday, I was too talkative and asked Sister Shuang. She said that you weren't in closed-door training the day before I came. Then I asked Sister Shuang to describe the characteristics of several people who went to make trouble for my friend yesterday. Later, I went to the private army of Lanling Prefecture City and found that except for some people who were on duty, several people in the private army camp were missing. After investigation, I found that the missing private army of Lanling Prefecture City were very similar to those who claimed to be the city guards described by Sister Shuang. Only Uncle Ling and Uncle Ling's trusted aides can mobilize a private army. So, I guess that's the gist of it. Why would I send people to pretend to be the city guards and make trouble for your friend?" Ouyang Ling asked. "Because I don't intend to get involved in the matter between the city guards and the private army of Lanling Prefecture City. Uncle Ling didn't do this because he wanted to pull me in. This matter started because of me, so naturally it can only end with me." Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Ling and said, "So I simply made it big. First, I called Han Xian to Lanling Prefecture City, and then learned from Uncle Ling. I found someone to pretend to be the confidant of the commander surnamed Lin of the city guards and went to the city guards camp to inform the other city guards that the private army of Lanling Prefecture City framed me and insisted that the city guards wanted to rebel. They have already captured the young city lord and the city lord in Lanling Prefecture City and are preparing to kill them. The city guards are probably very sullen these days, and they are also Han Chang's confidants. When they heard that Han Xian and his son were captured, there will definitely be some impatient people who will rush to Lanling Prefecture City without understanding the situation. At that time, I will think of a way to make Han Xian attack me. Plus, the city guards have surrounded Lanling Prefecture City. These two together are equivalent to conclusive evidence. I think it will be enough to make Han Chang unable to explain. In the end, Han Chang will definitely come to Lanling Prefecture City. The only way is to submit to Uncle Ling. And if Han Chang comes personally, I think Uncle Ling will have to come out of seclusion. Good boy." Looking at Du Xiaofu, after a long time, Ouyang Ling opened his mouth and began to speak. His dew-like clear eyes rippled. He sighed slightly and said, "I treat you like this, what do you think in your heart?" Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Ling and his expression became serious again. He bowed again and said, "Thank you, Uncle Ling, the child is worth teaching." As expected of the son of those two terrifying fellows. As Ouyang Ling's voice sounded, the surrounding space rippled. After which, his figure gradually disappeared in a strange manner. A medicinal pill appeared in front of Du Xiaofu out of nowhere. He said, "You should have just broken through to the pulse stage. As your uncle, I don't have anything good to give you. This Gumai Soul pill has a great effect on stabilizing the meridians and spirits of those who have just broken through to the pulse stage. It is also a rather difficult item to find. Consider it my gift to you." By the time Du Xiaofu reached out and grabbed the Gumai Soul pill, Ouyang Ling's figure had already disappeared. Lanling Prefecture City, City Lord's Mansion. In a quiet small hall, a rather well-built man looked at Han Xian. His brows were slightly furrowed as he said, "You still lost. I don't understand why I fell for such a low-level trick. Even if I didn't attack him, I wouldn't have been tricked by him." Han Xian sat upright. His expression was dim as he raised his head slightly. "Because you were too anxious. You wanted to win too much, so you lost your sense of propriety." The well-built man said to Han Xian, "Even if you didn't attack that brat, the matter has already been settled. You went to the Lanling Prefecture, so you were destined to be controlled. You lost your sense of propriety, so you lost for sure. That brat is too shameless." Han Xian fiercely slapped the seat. He didn't expect that he would lose like this. "Don't find excuses for your loss. You lost twice in a row. It's enough. Winner takes all. Being shameless is also a skill." The well-built man looked at Han Xian and said, "That brat is not simple. Your loss this time may not be a bad thing for you. At least you can discover your own shortcomings. In the future, you won't lose so easily when you meet such an opponent. However, if you still can't admit your loss, then you won't have another chance to win in the future." Han Xian raised his head slightly. He didn't reply. "City Lord, young master, there is a person called Du Xiaofu outside the door. He said he is looking for young master." An old man who looked like a housekeeper walked in and said respectfully to the two, "It's time for the 5th watch. Brothers, go to bed early after reading." Chapter 152. Tianwu Academy. Hearing this, Yuan Shanshan, Ouyang Ling, and Ouyang Shuang revealed puzzled expressions. This was especially so for Ouyang Ling and Yuan Shanshan. Both of them had surprised expressions on their faces. "Xiaofu, does your father know that you're going to Tianwu Academy?" Ouyang Ling asked Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu looked at the puzzled expressions of the three and nodded. "This is my father's intention. My father hopes that I can go to Tianwu Academy." Hearing this, Ouyang Ling and Yuan Shanshan looked at each other, their gazes fluctuating slightly. Then, Yuan Shanshan said to Du Xiaofu, "Since that's the case, go to Tianwu Academy. I believe your father has his own plans. However, Xiaofu, Aunt Shan doesn't want you to leave so soon. Why don't you stay with Aunt Shan for a few more days? Even though you've been in Lanling residence, you've been running around and didn't spend time with Aunt Shan. Aunt Shan, I'll visit you often in the future." Du Xiaofu smiled. The warmth he experienced in the Lanling residence during this period of time was enough to fill his heart with warmth every time he thought about it. "Sister Shan, this brat wants to go to Tianwu Academy. If you keep him here for a few more days, I'm afraid his heart won't be here. Just let him go." Ouyang Ling placed his hand lightly on Yuan Shanshan's shoulder and said to Ouyang Shuang, "Lass, it's time for you to return to Tianwu Academy. Why don't you go with Xiaofu? You'll have a companion along the way. Me and him." Ouyang Shuang's expression changed slightly, her face filled with unwillingness. However, she seemed to have thought of something and a smile appeared on her face. She looked at Du Xiaofu with an ambiguous smile and said, "All right, I'll bring him to Tianwu Academy. It just so happens that the Academy's new round of recruitment is about to begin. So you're from Tianwu Academy? Du Xiaofu was surprised. He didn't expect Ouyang Shuang to be from Tianwu Academy. Seeing Du Xiaofu's astonished expression, Yuan Shanshan chuckled, "Your big sister Shuang has been cultivating in Tianwu Academy for 3 years now. She is only back for 4 months to visit her family, so it's about time for her to head back. It's good to go to Tianwu Academy. There are many things to learn there. Your father and I both graduated from Tianwu Academy back then." Ouyang Ling looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. "Uncle Ling and my father are both from Tianwu Academy?" Du Xiaofu was astonished once more. He didn't expect his alcoholic father to be a student of Tianwu Academy as well. "Your father and I entered Tianwu Academy at the same time. We cultivated and tempered ourselves together." Ouyang Ling raised his gaze as he recalled the past. A smile appeared on his face as he looked at Du Xiaofu with a strange gaze. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he said, "You have to be careful when you go to Tianwu Academy. You mustn't be careless. Otherwise, you might suffer." "Why?" Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Ling's strange gaze and felt that something was amiss. "That's because your father has always been famous in Tianwu Academy. Over the past decade, he has been ranked second on the bounty board for a long time. Everyone in Tianwu Academy wants to find your father," Ouyang Shuang said to Du Xiaofu with a spurious smile. "What's the bounty board?" Du Xiaofu asked meekly. He didn't understand the use of Tianwu Academy's bounty board. For some reason, Ouyang Shuang was very attentive and patient. With a smile on her beautiful face, she explained to Du Xiaofu, "On Tianwu Academy's bounty board, there are many unpardonable villains from the Stone Dragon Empire. There are also enemies who have killed our Tianwu Academy's students over the years. There are also people from powers who are hostile to our Tianwu Academy. As long as a Tianwu Academy student captures or kills a person on the board, he or she will be able to obtain the corresponding reward on the board." "Then why is my father on the bounty board?" Du Xiaofu was getting more and more confused. So the bounty board was actually a wanted list? As a student of Tianwu Academy, how did his drunkard father end up on Tianwu Academy's wanted list? Not to mention, he was ranked second on the board. Yuan Shanshan smiled and said, "Actually, it's nothing much. Your father took Tianwu Academy's treasure, Lightning Dragon, and never returned it to Tianwu Academy. Those fellows in Tianwu Academy are too stingy." Lightning Dragon, what a familiar name. Du Xiaofu frowned. Then, his gaze flickered as he recalled everything he saw in his realistic dream. His father's weapon was a spear named Lightning Dragon. The spear possessed astonishing might, resembling a lightning dragon roaring in the sky. He didn't expect it to be Tianwu Academy's treasure. "Mother, Uncle Du didn't just take Tianwu Academy's treasure, right? I heard that back then, Tianwu Academy's talisman department used all the spiritual herbs and natural treasures that Tianwu Academy had collected over countless years. Together with the combined efforts of all the experts in the talisman department, it took them 3 whole years to refine the majestic Emperor pill. However, it was snatched away by Uncle Du in the end." Ouyang Shuang glanced at her mother. She didn't expect Tianwu Academy's treasure, the Lightning Dragon, to be a small matter in her mother's eyes. She was clearly too protective of Du Xiaofu's family. "This." Yuan Shanshan smiled bitterly as her jade-like skin flushed red. She glared at her daughter and said, "Aren't pills meant to be consumed by humans? It doesn't matter who consumes them." Ouyang Shuang looked at her mother and rolled her eyes. She was completely speechless. "I didn't expect drunkard dad to cause so much trouble." Upon hearing Ouyang Shuang's words, Du Xiaofu had a rough understanding of the situation. Suddenly, he wondered if it was a wise choice for him to enter Tianwu Academy. Raising his head slightly, he asked Ouyang Ling weakly, "Uncle Ling, since my father is on Tianwu Academy's bounty board, can I still enter Tianwu Academy?" "This." Ouyang Ling frowned as well. Then, he said to Du Xiaofu, if you enter Tianwu Academy, no one will know that you're Du Tingshuan's son. As long as you don't say anything, no one will know. It seems like this is the only way. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. His drunkard dad had caused so much trouble in Tianwu Academy, yet he still wanted him to enter Tianwu Academy. Wasn't this clearly making things difficult for his son? The journey from Lanling Prefecture City to Tianwu Academy isn't short. However, with the king-scaled demonic tiger as your mount, it will be much faster. However, when you enter the dark forest, you won't be able to ride on the king-scaled demonic tiger and it will take some time. You will set off tomorrow, so be careful along the way. Ouyang Ling said. Why can't I ride on the king-scaled demonic tiger in the dark forest? Du Xiaofu asked. Stupid. Ouyang Shuang didn't hold back as she attacked Du Xiaofu. The dark forest is filled with experts. Once a Pulse Spirit Realm king-scaled demonic tiger enters, it will immediately attract the attention of some experts. At that time, it will either become someone's mount or have its mystic bones and blood essence dug out. Lass, you won't be escorted back to Tianwu Academy this time. You must be careful when you pass through the dark forest, Ouyang Ling said to Ouyang Shuang with a stern expression. I know. It's not my first time entering the dark forest. Ouyang Shuang nodded. After chatting with Ouyang Ling and Aunt Shan for a while, Du Xiaofu returned to his room. Initially, Du Xiaofu was excited that he was going to Tianwu Academy. However, after hearing about what his drunkard dad did in Tianwu Academy, he felt depressed. He had no idea why his drunkard dad wanted him to enter Tianwu Academy. If others found out that he was his son, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the room, Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment before muttering, since I'm going to Tianwu Academy, I can't lag behind in my cultivation. I have to raise my strength as soon as possible. After finishing his words, Du Xiaofu slowly raised his hand and a pill appeared in his palm. Walala! The runes on the pill rippled as though energy was about to seep out from it. Even the calm space around him rippled when the pill appeared, as though a rock had been thrown into a lake. An alluring fragrance immediately spread out. It was the Gumai Soul Pill that Du Xiaofu obtained from the Lanling Prefecture's mansion master Ouyang Ling a few days ago. Du Xiaofu's body moved and the tip of his foot pushed off the ground. His body immediately rose and sat cross-legged on the bed at a neither fast nor slow pace. The transformation in his hand condensed. After which, he looked at the Gumai Soul Pill in his palm and muttered softly, consume it and stabilize your cultivation. Pinching the pill between his thumb and index finger, Du Xiaofu opened his mouth slightly and flicked his index finger. Under the effect of a skillful force, the Gumai Soul Pill entered his mouth. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. Before Du Xiaofu could react, the Gumai Soul Pill had already turned into pure energy that spread throughout his body. This energy spread out like tens of thousands of energy threads and immediately surged into Du Xiaofu's body. The energy formed by the Gumai Soul Pill seemed to have intelligence. After entering his body, it immediately wrapped around the martial vein in Du Xiaofu's body, which could be sensed but could not be explained with words. That mysterious feeling was extremely wonderful, causing Du Xiaofu to feel that even his martial vein was being pulled. Just as Uncle Ling said, this Gumai Soul Pill is indeed extraordinary. Du Xiaofu was astonished. Then, he calmed his mind and formed a seal with his hand. He began to absorb the pure energy within the Gumai Soul Pill. His mind guided the pure energy in his body to wrap around his martial vein. Chi la la. As the pure energy wrapped around the martial vein in his body, Du Xiaofu also gradually sank into a state of confusion. A moment later, Du Xiaofu's body suddenly trembled. It was as if something in his body had awakened in an instant. Suddenly, a large amount of mysterious light erupted from his body. Lines of mysterious light gradually leaped out from his body, accompanied by a terrifying power that spread out in an instant. Xiao Yu, continue to write. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.